Welcome to Biggest Geekus. We are your hosts. I am Joe.
And I'm Randy.
This is episode 31 of our podcast, and the date is April 7th, 2021.
So, homie?
not much. Trying to stay positive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a hard thing to do with all the crap that's going on now.
Right. And
last 2 weeks.
Yeah. And the pretty much non-gaming.
Yeah, true.
Well, I've been replacing the gaming with doing a little bit of writing because I've always wanted to be a writer, and I've started. So
very cool. Are you writing like a book type thing, a story, or something else?
I hope a book.
Okay.
I hope
very cool. Yeah. You said you were listening to some lectures this week, you said, about Brandon Sanderson. So
yeah, Brandon Sanderson has a free lecture from Brigham Young University. Well, it's not a free lecture, it's a free lecture series. So listening to that.
Cool.
Very inspiring. So we have some call-ins.
Yeah.
Well, a rack of call-ins, shall we say.
Rock on.
So
you gonna turn that so I can hear the sweetness?
No. Why would I want to do that?
Is that our boy Jason?
It is.
Sweet.
All right. You let me know if you can hear it.
Okay. Nope, too low.
Could you hear something, but not much?
Yeah, just barely.
Okay, it might have been coming through the speaker. So let's see.
Sorry about the background noise. So, a couple comments on your latest episode. Yeah, I didn't listen to your updated other episode. I just, caught the beginning. I was curious to see what the change was. But, so you guys actually have not covered 3.5 yet, or 3.0 yet, right? You were going to do it last episode. You didn't do it. I didn't listen to the end, so I'm assuming you didn't plug that in. So you still owe me a 3.5 recap, or your feelings on that. I've never played 4.0, so I can't comment on 4th edition. I would definitely be willing to give it a shot. I like board games and miniature war games. So, and I've got the 4th edition board games, the D&D adventure board games, which are okay. They're kind of dull because they're kind of, I don't know, they're okay. But I'd try 4th edition.
I might try 4th edition if you ran it.
Yeah, because it would be completely different. It would be like really good. And no, I don't know. I understand. I think 4E's, it's got some decent merits. We talked about it. And yeah, don't worry, Jason. The plan is probably to cover 3E tonight. So but I think he's right. I think it's the board games are good. I've got was it Curse of Strahd or Strahd something or other, and I've got a couple other ones, Dungeon of the Mad Mage. They're fun for a quick little game. They're not very complicated. I think a hardcore board gamer would find them pretty weak, but I like them, and the cool minis are neat. So right. Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. 4E's, it's not for everybody. It's not really for me. So,
right.
I'm one of the everybody. All right.
Wow, I hope I hit the stop button before I sneeze there. Sorry about that. So, talking about games versus playing. Yeah, I'm in a couple pretty active Discord communities, so I end up talking about games quite a bit. As far as in person or like actual voice back and forth with people, I game more than I talk. If you count Discord and messaging, I talk about games more than I play. But actual like voice to voice, online, I definitely play more than I talk. My schedule's kind of odd because I work every other weekend, so I'm off every other weekend. But I end up playing, so I look at things in 2-week cycles, like, what my work schedule is. I'm in 5 different bi-weekly games, so I play about 15, 16 hours every 2 weeks. So that's my gaming time, 15 or 16 hours every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Whoa. Yeah. Yeah. I think you're wowing the same thing I'm wowing.
Well, 2 WoWs. One, the average is what, 2 to 3 hours a game, he said.
Well, if he does 16 hours and he does 5 bi-weekly games, so 3 hours ish.
Wowie. That's very
pretty
short.
That's very short, but it's a lot of games. So maybe that's the price of playing lots of games.
Yeah.
And he plays online mainly, he said. So that's probably another issue. I mean,
no, solely. He only plays online.
Oh, that's sad. That's not going to be the case for us much longer. And I think it's pretty cool that he plays a lot. Yeah. I mean, I'm a little jealous, Jason. So kudos to you, brother.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of those, they don't plug in really good together. The 1 week isn't bad. I play with people all across the world, which is wonderful. I don't mind doing gaming. I'd much rather play in person, but I do not have an in-person group, so all my gaming is online. But there's a Monday game that's in the afternoon. I'm U.S. East Coast. There's a Monday game in the afternoon. There's a Thursday night game, where I'm running Barbarians Lemuria. That's like, I don't know, 9:30 to 10 or 10:30 or 11:30. And then the other week, there is a Tuesday night game from like 9:30 to 11:30, a Wednesday morning game from 5 to 7 or 6 to 8, depending. I think we're on 6 to 8 now due to time changes of everybody. And then that weekend, there's a Saturday night game, again, 9:30, 11:30, and then a Sunday morning game, like 9 to 12.
That's a busy gaming schedule, but
yes,
if it's only a couple of hours at a pop, that's probably not too bad.
And you mentioned, didn't he have to get up early one time to play? And if he plays with dudes across the pond, you're going to be some tough coordination sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
And those are a pretty big mix of systems. I'm running Barbarians Lemuria, but one game is Mithras Classic Fantasy. One game was against the Dark Master that I was running, but now it's GURPS for the next 6 sessions. One is, I'm trying to get mixed up here. One was Harn Master, now we switched to High Colonies, which is Harn in space, or the Harn system in space. One is Masks, which is a Powered by the Apocalypse young superhero game. Like watch like the Young Justice cartoon, it's like that. And then one is Beckme, D&D Beckme, but we're using the orcs of Thar. The Gazetteer, we're playing humanoid races, so we're all playing like orcs. And well, I don't know, that game might be switching up though for a little while. We've been plugging in some Call of Cthulhu scenarios in there, and we're talking about maybe putting some else in there for a little while. But that's a long ongoing group.
That's interesting. Jason plays a lot of different games. We talk about switching things up, and he was saying the GURPS game. One of them was going to be maybe just 6 sessions. I wonder, Jason, do your campaigns tend to be short? Sounds like maybe you tell, and I listen to your other episodes. Sounds like they kind of tell one story and then do something else.
That's what it seems like to me.
One fairly short story, but he could correct me. Does he have any games that are like 25, 30 sessions plus long? Any real long campaigns,
That'd be interesting to find out.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that.
As far as people not understanding, my wife does not game. She puts up with it, but she gets frustrated because I have clutter and boxes all over the house. So because we don't have a dedicated game room, so she gets frustrated with the clutter and with the money I spend sometimes. But she doesn't give me a hard time over it. I've got my buddy who's my best man at my wedding. He doesn't game at all, so he doesn't understand. He gives me a hard time every now and then, but not too much. He just doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. But I don't understand. Like you say, there are things he enjoys that I don't get into, so it's not that big of a deal. In the Army, I didn't have that bad. I didn't really have bad experience. We hooked up with some other gamers. When we were deployed to Cuba, running migrant camps in '95, they let us use the mess tent at night to run games, which was pretty cool. Ran D&D and Dark Conspiracy.
It's pretty cool. When I was in the military, there was a lot of, from what I understand, a lot of people in the military that played.
I've heard that.
Yeah.
It's funny. Go ahead.
No, it's just interesting that folks that do dangerous things for a living also don't have a problem pretending to do dangerous things for a living.
Maybe part of the excitement.
Right.
Though the truth is, it's saying like, his buddy, he says it's not a huge deal, doesn't really understand it, and his wife doesn't really like it, doesn't give him a hard time. Honestly, Jason sounds like he's pretty chill, dude. I can't imagine him being, he probably fit in just about any group. That's just my gut instinct, the way he talks. He probably fits in probably pretty much anywhere. And so I'm wondering if he's had issues before. That'd be interesting to know in his groups.
Well, I've heard him on his podcast say he's a social gamer. Well, no.
Yep.
Well, he might have, but he's also said it in messages to other podcasts where I'm a social gamer. So
yeah. And that's cool.
What else do we play in the Army? We played Rifts. There's an active Star Wars group that did a Stormtrooper campaign. I don't know. Overall, my experience in the Army with role-playing was actually pretty positive. The Army is where we did that game. I think I already called you about this, where we introduced a new guy. You know, we're drinking, and he was playing an elf, and he told me he spoke Elvish, and he spoke like Elvis the whole game. So, yeah, I have some good memories from playing in the Army. Anyway, I'll let you go. I just wanted to comment on your things, on your different topics. And, the tower concept is really cool. It's almost like, I mean, you almost think of like the Hateful Eight, almost like that, wave stop where they stop there, right? And as far as the high-level game where you start off without your memory, that's kind of cool. That's kind of what, like, Runehammer is going to do with his Viking Death Squad.
I had meant to check out Runehammer, and I keep forgetting.
I'm writing it down. That may actually happen if I write it down. He's also the guy that did the 5e hardcore mode.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Professor Dungeon Master likes to push that a lot too.
Yeah, I may have heard him from Professor Dungeon Master, who I've watched a video of today.
Oh, okay.
And I didn't hate it.
That's shocking. What was it about? What was the topic?
It was about intelligence.
Oh, okay. How important is it? He's done charisma too.
Yeah. He basically calls intelligence in 5e a dump stat because it's almost useless except for the wizard and the artificer. Okay.
Fair, pretty fair.
Yeah.
If you're not familiar with that, I think the initial video is pretty short. Go check it out. Look for Runehammer Viking Death Squad. Basically, the game is designed around the Black Sabbath song War Pigs. His idea is that one side is resurrected. The War Pigs have resurrected a bunch of ancient heroes, like Viking heroes, to fight Lucifer, I think. Kind of like say, loosely based on War Pigs. It's kind of a neat concept. But yeah, go check his YouTube video out. He's pretty crazy on YouTube. He gets pretty pumped up, and it's pretty neat. So, okay, I'm gonna let you go. I will talk to you guys later.
Thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, man. We'll check that out for sure. 100%. Cool.
He has a really good podcast.
He does,
and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, actually, like at first I didn't know. I was like, he'll talk about movies and then talk about books, and at first I'm kind of like, he reviewed my, I don't want to hear that. Then after a while, I'm like, wait a minute. He's one of our people. He's a gamer, and his takes are very game oriented. And I actually enjoy that. I enjoy the break, his unboxing, which is kind of odd that it's a podcast where he unboxes, but I still enjoy it. I think it's cool that he breaks it all up. And who's the guy that does the singing for him, his little ditties. They're real. I love them.
They're funny.
They're great. I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, Jason recently did a podcast on that included Stargate, and that's one of my favorite movies from a few decades ago.
I must need to see that again because everybody says that, and I recall not liking it.
Well, that's because you don't have good taste in movies.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Okay,
I can understand why you may not like it because it's not action packed.
No, it's not. Well, that's not all. There's a lot of movies I like. Like I love The Hobbit. I love Lord of the Rings. I think I was expecting Stargate. I guess I don't know. I'm gonna have to watch it again. It's been a long time. I have to watch it. Sometimes now that I've matured, sometimes I like movies I didn't like before.
Right.
So yeah, thanks, Jason.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, in our crowd, we're always talking about movies and books, as whether it relates to gaming or not. We do,
Right.
we
Sure.
a lot of times, if the subject of the conversation is gaming, and we bring up other stuff, we tie it together, maybe. But
Yeah,
it's a thing.
we have talked about other things in our lives besides gaming. That's a fact.
Yes.
But it all comes back to gaming, so that's sort of it.
It does.
So while we're visiting, so we're still in the positive material plane, and I thought for a kind of wrap this little segment up, we would talk about 3 great things about our hobby. Why don't you go first, Joe? You're the man.
Well, for me, it's food for the imagination and for creativity. That's what when I'm playing and I'm in the zone, I'm imagining the things that are happening in the game. And then even when I'm not playing, I'm imagining situations that can happen with characters that are active and things like that. I'm always tinkering with the game rules, and I'm always thinking about settings and stuff like that.
Well, you guys can't see me just nodding and smiling because that's my number 1 too. Imagination. We got 2 of the 3 exactly the same. Go next, bud.
Well, that's all number 1.
Oh, right.
And number 2 is it's good for bonding. It's good for bonding. Developed, I think currently all apart from you, apart from you, every one of the friends I have due to gaming.
I have garnered a lot of friends that way, for sure. I mentioned that my number 2 is kind of great memories and in jokes and things like that. You get lots of those things, but that's part of it, is the bonding that you have with the people that you're playing with. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. And number 3, for me, because playing and reading game books, and it gets me thinking about medieval history. And so I'm interested in that, and I go search things out, and you end up learning things.
Yeah,
I definitely know.
Well, yeah, like, when we saw, I remember in the first edition Player's Handbook, they had this pole arm. It's called a guise arm, right?
Right.
It's a French. I'm like, what the heck is a guise arm? And so I actually did some little look, because I want to know the difference between a halberd and a guise arm and a bec de Corbin and all that crap. So it makes you kind of dig in there, or used to anyway. I don't know if the new books do, maybe not as much, but definitely the old AD&D and D&D books made you look up stuff, because and Gygax too, he would use words, milieu, right, verisimilitude, and you're like, what the heck? I might be able to get the gist of it, in context, but eventually I'm like, I got to look that word up. I don't even know what that is.
Eventually.
Yeah, true. So for me, I have the exact same first 2 as Joe, as imagination and bonding and friendship. The one that's a little bit different is, I thought one of the cool things about our game is the different ways, and by game I mean the RPGs, they can be played even within one game. The different things and the ways you can play it at your table.
Yeah.
People have all sorts of little table rules, and just the way certain groups interact differently with the rules than others. So, that's, to me, that's one of the coolest things about our hobby, that you get to make it your own, and that's kind of encouraged for the most part.
Right. When I went active duty and seen all the different ways of people, I didn't really, before I left for active duty, I think our group was the only group I had ever played in.
For me, it was.
So I didn't know any other way to play, and wow.
I figured everybody played the same way we did.
Yeah, there's some way different ways to play, and some I'm happy to say I have not seen since.
and I've seen some that I wouldn't care to do, but I wouldn't call them wrong. I would just say, yeah, I wouldn't play that way.
Not for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. All right. We ready to hop on into the main topic?
Yeah, main topic. It will be coming in 2 parts, essentially.
Yeah.
Game and gamer mindsets.
Yes.
The definition of a mindset is a habitual or characteristic mental attitude that determines how you will interpret and respond to situations. Right before we get into this, we might want to mention that right before we started recording, I'd told Randy that our listenership seems to have fallen off a cliff.
No,
kind of
no.
It kind of correlates with when we decided to stop talking about woke stuff because we didn't want to be so negative. So perhaps some folks out there took umbrage at that and don't want to. They came here to hear us rag on the woke folks, and so what we decided to do is, once the music is over at the end of the podcast, we're going to. I don't know if it's going to be a rag or a rage session or whatever.
It's going to be a
something.
blast. I'm blasting somebody. Promise you. Joe may not. Joe is a fair-minded individual that I respect greatly. I am not. So, no, that's not true, but it's kind of true. I find some things very frustrating. I wonder, because Joe and I both, and Joe mentioned this before, one of the reasons he pushed to do this podcast initially is he was listening to podcasts. He was like, man, it's just a bunch of people that I don't really agree with in terms of political or socially. And then they always squeeze that crap in. And, really, and I don't blame them, because you can't hide what you believe, or at least you shouldn't. Why are you hiding it? I'd rather someone be straight up and tell me, look, I believe in all these policies and actions and things that you don't. Then I would know where I stand. Right. And so the truth is, I don't want to hide that from the people that listen. And so I think I'm going to cut loose a little bit, and I'm going to kind of just go back to saying like it is. And I feel like there's so many things that happen almost every week that there is. I mean, heck, just pay attention to WOTC and I can find something that annoys the crap out of me. Right. And so,
I think it's just, I was thinking it was getting a little more negative than was useful, but I wasn't wanting us to, hide or anything. It's just real negative. All the news was negative.
Yeah, and I think that's why we dropped the news segment, and we might bring that back, we might not. But I think, and we don't know for sure if that's the reason that they dropped off. It could just be like, you two dudes are boring, and that's okay.
We may not be doing this right.
Yeah, and it's okay. And maybe we'll get better, or maybe we'll just fade out. I don't think so. I feel like we got a lot to say still. But I think doing it near the end of the podcast. So if you don't want to hear the complaints and stuff, go ahead. It'll probably be really good though. So I would strongly encourage you to listen to it, because we're pretty good at complaining.
Yes, we are. I think it's our superpower.
I think it is. I think I have I would at least be a sidekick to Complain Man.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right. So game and gamer mindsets. Our mindset is on games.
Yes. Go ahead.
So we're going to start off with the games, and we're going to do the gamers after that. And we're going to start off with is the game is Dungeons and Dragons in all of its iterations.
Right. And I kind of wanted to give Jason another plug here, because he had his episode 186 of Nerds RPG Variety Cast. We talked about it before.
Yes.
About TSR D&D and WOTC D&D inspired this discussion. So we may borrow some of his ideas. Thanks, Jason. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
The check is not in the mail. And he had a discussion with Guy Barry at Shadow the GM, which I thought was most excellent. I've listened to it twice. And I have a couple of links on Joe. Will put them in the show notes about definitional characteristics of TSR versus WOTC D&D, and then a little just a comment by, I think it wasn't Skip Williams, who was the guy, Jonathan Tweet, about 3E and the FEEL of DnD, and that was actually really good, because I thought, and Joe didn't read the comments after, but there were actually some pretty good discussions on there. And so anyway, I'm just fueling that as sort of the fire behind this. And the idea is we're going to talk about what kind of mindsets do games seem to engender, right? So I think certain versions of D&D engender a certain sort of play. They get you thinking a certain way, get you in certain habits, and thus a mindset, versus what mindsets do players and GMs, just to say players, including the GMs, bring to the table, which it can be separate. And it can translate from game to game sometimes, can be more powerful than the mindset that the game is trying to project, I think.
Right, because at the end of the day, I think the people playing the game, perhaps if they're newbies, not so much, but once you get in the groove, you're going to exert your personality over the table, and collectively too. And
after you've tasted a few sessions or tasted a few different games, you're going to be like, all right, this is what I consider good gaming. This is what I consider enjoyable gaming. Right. And so your mindset will be set. So first, the games, right? You'll notice, Joe, that under Dungeons and Dragons, I also listed inside there clones, OSR types, 13th Age, Pathfinder, Warhammer, Shadow of the Demon Lord, and Rolemaster. Kind of because they're all fantasy, but we're going to focus really hard on D&D and then make comments on the others as they come up.
Right.
And,
I can see the 13th Age and Pathfinder because they were clear.
Yeah.
Clearly,
Warhammer, not so much.
Rolemaster, well, back in the day when Rolemaster first came out, it was billed as alternate systems for use with D&D.
It did. Spell Law, dude. Remember, you went crazy about that.
Nobody wanted nothing to do with it.
Because it was stupid. Turns your bones to jelly. I can't have characters casting spells like that.
Of course you can't. You barely want people to be casting spells at all.
I don't want spells that do damage to my monsters. I want them to heal them.
Right.
I think we should have a game where monsters are healed by all spells. No.
Yes.
Anyway, so let's start with the D&D variants, okay? And so looking at OD&D, what'd you think of what I wrote? Here's what I wrote down. PCs are a dime a dozen. 0 to hero, mercenary. I think the game encourages you to kill the monsters, take their stuff, loot up.
Yeah, I don't think the hero part is very applicable.
No? Zero to
a little bit better.
You can get to like 9th level as a fighter, dude. Get your castle.
Yeah. Yeah. How many games ever got there?
I don't know. I mean,
when we played it, we got to like 3rd or 4th level, but then again, by the time we got to there, we went to 1E.
We transitioned pretty quickly through the BECME and the OD&D and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the game was very kind of like loot and pillage. Not necessarily villages, but like go and get to the dungeon. We talked about, I think it's almost like, and it was so big about the dungeon,
because being the hero wasn't really part of it. It was just killing the monsters and taking their stuff.
And the alignments were lawful, neutral, and chaotic.
Yeah.
No good or evil. Though I think chaotic kind of implied a little evil. Lawful.
Lawful was supposed to be the good guys, and chaotic was to be the evil guys.
Yeah. So I think the game itself, the mechanics that they put in there, things like basically just how to kill things and take their stuff, was encouraging that. Now 1E AD&D, after BECME and stuff or wherever it fit in, it made it more codified. I do think characters definitely in the book could become more heroic.
Oh, sure.
In terms of power, you could become very powerful. Though I think there was still a bit of lethality to the game that didn't change. Very low level lethality, but still mercenary too. I thought 1E D&D was fairly mercenary, or at least that's the way we played it, and I think the rules kind of encouraged it.
Yeah, if I can't remember anything about the transition to 1E that changed the low level lethality.
No,
not really.
We played basic and expert. We didn't play the original white box, but basic and expert. And then we found the AD&D books, told that story before, and we just were off and running. I felt there was no change. I kept running modules that were basic D&D modules. I mean, right. I ran them forever, but keep on the Borderlands 47 times. And so it seemed like to me, we were just doing the same thing. I don't recall reading anything that made me feel like it was heroic. I did think 2nd edition brought that in though. I think 2nd edition, because of their settings, the Dragonlance setting was definitely you're playing heroes.
Right.
I felt like in Ravenloft, you were playing heroes that couldn't be over the top because they were kind of doomed to some sort of price. There were heroes that were going to pay the price to succeed, but there was going to be a price. But you were definitely encouraged to be the heroes in the Ravenloft setting. Some folks call it the setting edition. I think Barry and Jason referred to that in some sense. And I loved it. I mean, to me, you remember at one time I had just about every box set there was.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff. I don't know why. I think the customer base wasn't large enough to absorb all the different settings, and they considered it fractioned. Well, the customer base, some wanted to just play in the Forgotten Realms, and if one got really popular, then they could think that the other production lines are a waste. So the Forgotten Realms alone, I thought that encouraged much more heroic play than Greyhawk. Greyhawk, you felt like, I mean, not that it just seems like the setting was kind of like you're
you're just a farmer, dude, until you get, better. And Forgotten Realms, like the characters are the heroes, Now, granted, they had, all the NPCs everybody complained about being really high level, but I mean, you were supposed to be these. That was my feeling when I read it. It felt more sweeping and epic and heroic than Greyhawk, even though
there was more to read.
Tons.
Yeah, Greyhawk was a highlights. You got hit the highlights on that one.
But I think the second edition rules in particular made you special. I mean, think about the specialty priests, right?
Right.
You worship Odin, so you're like this. Or you worship Tyr, so you're like this. So they made you very special from the get-go. And I think that wasn't the first time magic schools were introduced. I believe so.
Maybe.
There were no schools. There was no like you could be a diviner. You could be an evoker in second edition. You could not in, well, that was one of your titles. If you want to go by titles in first edition, Invoker, Enchanter. I'm like, yeah, that's a good switch. But there was actually mechanical advantages to do that. So what they're doing in my mind, second edition was saying your character's important. He's not just a dude that's trying to make his way in the world.
Right.
He's going to be important. And to me, that feel was a bigger change. It was a push towards story. And I know that a lot of second edition adventures could feel pretty railroady. And when you would read them, and as a GM, I would read them and go, man, if the players don't do this one thing, the adventure's over. I mean, meaning they're not going to get to hear about what they should do. There's several adventures like that where they would say, I wish I had a good example on top of my head, but I don't. I feel like there was one in the adventure, the big thick adventure book by Monty Cook, which is excellent, called Dead Gods. But the way it starts, if you don't bite on the hook, you won't do the adventure.
Oh, that was a second edition adventure?
No, Dead Gods? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because that was with
Planescape.
The settings, Planescape.
Yeah.
It was late in it was late in
it was late
in the cycle, but yeah.
I mean, I'm not knocking Monty for how he wrote it. I'm just saying they read
he had a lot of good adventures.
They read really well.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like I thought in first edition, it was like, here's the Tomb of Horrors. Send your dudes through if you want to.
Right.
Where can I put it? Wherever you want. It's kind of generic-y. It does have, a Sararak, but there wasn't much about him that anybody had talked about when Tomb of Horrors first came out. But I mean, in Dead Gods, there's lots of built-up story. You got to be in the plains. You got to be doing this and doing that. And it's probably a good idea if you've run the Modron March beforehand. It makes more sense and a lot of connective tissue. And some folks don't like that, but I think that was the mindset. Tell a sweeping story. You know, that's my thought. I don't know. What do you think about second?
I didn't read modules back then.
Yeah, you were much more of a player, weren't you?
I just played. So
right.
And when I look at modules now, which I don't a whole lot, but
no,
I don't. I look for what I can use.
Right.
More than what the characters are supposed to do, quote unquote.
Yeah. Well, being a hardcore collector, I just buy modules left and right. It seems like not so much today, but I did there for a while, especially during the Pathfinder era. But I think definitely second edition was leading us down that path. And the fracturedness, I don't know. I think it was significant, but I don't know. It didn't affect me. I was like, I want everything. So
right. And I think if D&D had the audience then that it does now, it could probably survive having a very large amount of settings.
Maybe so. So do you think that first edition and before kind of the game itself encouraged that mindset of mercenary? And do you think second edition was taken a little bit away from that or not? Did you not see that?
It's possible. When did they take away gold for experience points?
I think that might have been in first.
So it was in the OD&D, but not first edition.
Correct.
Okay.
But I don't remember for sure. So.
Yeah. I'm not sure. Second edition to me was the setting edition. That's for sure.
For sure.
I'm not sure if apart from that, for me, the game did well. There were some annoyances I had with second edition.
I was going to say, I remember you being kind of annoyed with second.
But apart from a few mechanical differences, and there were only a few, it was, I think that it was essentially the same game. I think that didn't they remove some classes.
They removed the assassin,
The monk.
and the monk, and
Didn't they get rid of the barbarian too?
Might have, yes. And I believe that's the edition where demons and devils were called Tanari and
Beatazu. Yeah.
Yeah, Beatazu, or whatever they're called. I would call them Beatazu, but I don't know how they're pronounced.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because I thought the fluff became really rich in second edition. That's just one of my reasons for thinking it was meant to be more pushing us more toward story and less toward getting the dungeon, kill monsters, take their crap.
Well, I think it got better once the settings came out.
Oh yeah,
and added the flavor. The initial second edition offering was kind of blasé, kind of blah.
Yeah, agreed.
But when the settings came out, I think that so did in second editions when all the splat books, the complete book of this, that, and the other thing.
Complete book of Dwarven Artificers, yeah.
Right.
Whatever it was, yeah.
Whatever they were. There was lots of them, and a lot of that was
I thought it was trash. I thought most of it was crap.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
That's when we got Spelljammer. That was kind of
hey,
kinda weird.
Easy. Our boy Tim's running Spelljammer at CabinCon.
Yeah, he can do that if he wants.
You're playing, and you better love it.
He can run subpar gaming material if he likes to.
I want in. I want to play one of those GIFs. GIF.
It's one of those
hippopotamus man.
Yeah, it's one of those. I like the idea of it, but I think some of the things, the phlogiston and crystal sphere stuff, I think is kind of weird.
I agree. I do too, but you have to admit that's very story.
Yeah.
That's not about killing things and taking their stuff, dude. That's like being a space pirate.
Right.
Yar. Not even a space pirate. More than that. More of a buccaneer. That you're not out to kill people, but you're like flying the space lanes. But I don't like the idea, but I think I have to admit it is flavorful.
Well, I like flying boats. I like flying ships. Those are cool.
Yeah. Dark sun, gritty, a world dying. All the vegetation is going away because of course, evil magic users. Because magic users do crap like that, and that's why I won't let Joe get high level, because I know his characters will drain the life from the world.
Well, and you can't run Dark Sun without at least wanting to become one of the Dragon High Lords.
No kidding, dude.
Which they had rules for, and for the other one, the angelic one, the Evangion.
Evangions, yeah.
Psionic wizard. Who doesn't want that?
But see, to me, I think that kind of thing of all these cool settings were all these ideas. I mean, first edition was Greyhawk in the first edition of the Forgotten Realms.
Right.
And there was Ravenloft too. Oh, that's true. Mm-hmm. But was it just a module in first edition?
It was just a module. I don't think it was a whole set.
Right. But Forgotten Realms was a setting.
Module had a lot of set. I remember it had a lot of. It wasn't merely a module. There was setting type material in it as well, wasn't there?
It's considered, and it's considered not just setting. It wanted to evoke a feel. It's considered one of the greatest. I think it's considered in Dungeon Magazine the very last time they ranked them. I think it was a top 3 adventure of all time. And I think appropriately so. It was very cool for its time.
Right.
Third edition comes along, right?
Third edition.
So here comes third.
Well, for me, it says you have down here your PC matters.
Yep.
Starts out great.
Yep.
Back to the roots of dungeon crawling. If you build them, they will dominate. Miniatures matter and hero to superhero. I think that the characters they might have you were a little bit more powerful to start out. I don't think a great deal.
Well, I get the feeling. Well, I don't know. To me, the feat struck me as, man, that's a power up.
Yeah,
just
but you might start with 1 if you're a human.
If you're a fighter, you get 2.
If you're a human.
Yes.
So,
which was pretty good reason to be a human.
Right.
To get that feat. A lot of folks did.
Right. So, but during its production, lots of people played other kind of races.
Sure. And because again, now here's where the change came, big change. So I'm not saying, I think there were still some story elements to it, mostly dungeon crawling though, but I think it was build. The build game changed the mindset of every player I played with.
Yeah.
I would absolutely say the way they think about gaming has changed because of third edition. Those that played it and liked it. It's like, wow, I can build this character. And then to marry it with 3.5 turned it up to 11.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I would count Pathfinder in this.
Oh, sure,
So
sure.
it's
sure.
part 3.x,
Yeah.
as we call it usually.
There was not a whole lot of mechanical difference between a Pathfinder and 3X, 3.5. You had the CMB, and CMD, and they handled skills a little differently, how you handle the points. But apart from that,
what about this?
about it.
What about this statement? One reason I think this game mindset is much more, you start out like a, total BA, which you're not total BA, but you're better, because I think the rules where you try to build encounters based upon CR is helping the players appear to be better.
Yeah.
And it's not, first edition, dude, is like, first level, turn a corner, there's an ogre. Really? Yeah, you went into his domain. I warned you. Roll initiative.
Right.
So I think in third edition, that would be frowned upon.
Right. Level appropriate encounters.
Mm-hmm.
However, I seem to remember looking at the entry for the orc.
Mm-hmm.
And the orc's damage range pretty much killed the characters it was designed to.
D12.
Yeah, D12.
Plus 4, I think.
Yeah.
Or 3. Yeah. So.
And it was a CR1?
Yep.
So a group of first level characters could get TPK'd by a single orc under the right conditions.
I can't recall the charts because I've seen so many in my life, but I'm sure it wasn't 4 orcs for 4 characters.
No, it was one orc.
Yeah, but even so, who's going to take the first hit? If you don't take him down, who's taking the first hit? Right. And it better not be the wizard, because he's dead. Yeah, but the game itself, I think, encourages the build, which encourages to focus purely upon the player character. It's all about him, and if it's all about him, he's got to be the focal point of the story. Whereas I think in second edition, it was about the story, but I don't think it was necessarily your character gets built, though the kits kind of did a little bit of that.
Yeah, it was a precursor for sure.
Skills and options.
Powers, yeah.
Yeah, all that poop did that.
I don't remember that very well, so I don't know. I know a lot of people consider that being a prelude to third edition, but I don't know how similar it was.
Yeah, I think there were some nuggets in there. I think they admitted that there was things in there they were testing. Yeah. I do think as we transition, so miniatures became very important in third edition.
Yeah.
Had a little bit of a discussion back and forth with Tinkar about that. I think there were miniatures. The game came from, OD&D came from a war game. So miniatures were part of that play in the sense that chainmail. But eventually, I would say very quickly, how important in Beckme in first edition and second edition were miniatures. Not very.
No, not from a rules point of view, but there was also the point of view of options for getting them were kind of limited in the early days.
Yeah.
I mean,
models, a few others, yeah.
Right. So pewter, I'm not sure what war game miniatures were made out of.
Lead, probably.
So, well, yeah. Probably so.
70s, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think third edition, though, did bring the miniatures to the forefront. And I'll be honest with you, that was an allure for me, because I always found, because I always had some minis. I was a mini guy, even back when they were lead or pewter. I wanted to have them at the table. And now I'm like, wow, we're really going to use them now. So again, miniatures. I mean, I'm doing miniatures. And I'm doing this to form an argument. Focus on the player. Focus on your character, how important your character is, his movement. And it became a bit of a part of the build game was a sub game. The movement of the miniatures on the board was a tactical part that was real, like rulesy. Yeah. If you step this way, it's an AOO. If you step that way, you won't provoke one. If you fall down, you get to provoke an AOO, or you don't. So I thought that was a part of the focus upon the players. And I'm not saying for a bad thing. But there were so many rules in third edition that were laid out and spelled out. I think it became, to me, a game that encouraged you to follow the dang rules. I mean, they didn't say that because they still mentioned Rule 0, but I think third edition was an implied, or at least players felt strong enough to say, well, you're not following the rules. This is what it says.
I know there always have been the rules lawyer. Mm-hmm. But I think in third edition, they really stepped up to the fore.
Yep.
And if you didn't, before third edition, you didn't have a lot of things that you did that were, especially how your character was made.
Right.
Because there wasn't that concept. But in
No.
third edition, if you gear your character toward a certain set of rules within the combat, like tripping or anything like that, but the DM says, "Yeah, I don't do tripping like that. I do it like this," and then your character is kind of
nerfed,
screwed or nerfed or whatever.
And I think that encourages the players to speak up. But I think that's probably a good thing. I think before there was too much of the whatever the DM says goes. He is the iron-fisted overlord of the table. At least I was.
Yeah.
So I mean, but in third edition, I didn't feel that way. I think I mentioned once before, I felt very uncomfortable to where I read the rules and they made sense to me for the most part. But I always looked at other players at my table, some of my rules lawyers, to interpret the rules because there were so many that I sometimes got a little less willing to make calls,
right.
or to judge because there's still every rule. There's going to be rules that have a lot of judgment calls. And so, whereas I think in second and first edition, just take the spells, the way the spells were described in second edition, there were many times you could argue over the interpretation.
Sure.
And both people would have valid points.
And
third, not as much.
Yeah.
Not as much.
Not as much. But the problem is the spell descriptions were like 3 times as long.
Yes. Yes, no doubt. Yeah. And then comes fourth edition, our favorite edition of all. I think they took miniatures to 11 and they brought in all these mechanics like pushing and pulling. I think the game, I think third required minis. I'll put in quotations. I wouldn't like to play third without minis much. I did it once and it was okay, but it wasn't great. I was a player. Fourth edition sounds like I wouldn't even want to try it because you moved in squares. The characters changed dramatically. It was definitely heroic. You were a bump up in power right from the beginning. You had all these powers you could keep redoing and redoing. 13th Age is a kind of a much better version in my mind of that, where you get these powers and right out the gate, 13th Age first level characters are pretty boss.
Right. Well, you're not supposed to be the same. Level 1 in 13th Age is not the same as level 1 in other games. But there's only 10 levels.
I think 4E claimed that too, but 4E went 1 to 30. That was the first time D&D had actually explicitly pointed out 30 levels in the core book.
Oh, I forgot about the 30.
Because they had like heroic, paragon, and an epic level, something like that.
Huh.
So if you started out, you're heroic. But I mean, that's okay. I think that's what 4E did. So with hero, with fourth edition, you were definitely a hero. I thought it seemed more like it pushed the game to become more like a board game. And I don't mean that even negatively, that you had to pay attention to the board a lot closer than even you did in third edition. So
probably.
But we didn't play it enough to have a lot of opinion there.
No.
Then comes 5E, right? Fifth edition. So here, definitely your heroes matter. You're getting ultimate freedom with the addition of Tasha's cauldron of whatever. Apparently you can make your race, ancestry or whatever the hell they're calling it now, species, whatever you want to call it. You can be, I'm a dwarf. I don't want +2 on con. I get +2 on. I could be wrong, but that's what I've been hearing. You can basically change your pluses around.
Yeah, it's gone from all the races or species or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Give it a word and use it. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Went from them being distinct and different to they're all basically the same.
And are there any races with minuses?
No, our minuses are supposed to all go away, from what I understand.
Okay.
That's what's in Tasha's is no penalties.
Oh, okay. But I do think
which is dumb. It's the dumbest thing ever.
I agree.
A 2 foot tall halfling cannot be as good a fighter as a human. Absolutely not. There's no way. You can't convince me, except with magic.
An exceptional halfling could not be as good a fighter as an average human.
Just like an average child isn't going to be able to.
Correct.
They're not any stronger than a child.
An exceptional halfling could be a better fighter than a suboptimal human. Someone who's really weak and really small.
Right.
But that's it.
And that's the point. Isn't the point that they're not human? The point is they're very small. They're very light. They're very weak. I mean, they're weak because there's no way that frame cannot support strength of a larger person and a more massive person. They just can't. So an 18 strength halfling wouldn't exist.
No. Or you'd be using different scales for this is 18 for a halfling, this is 18 for a human.
But I don't even they tried that crap with third edition early on.
Yeah, with different size weapons and discussion of that.
I didn't like that.
Me neither. It was terribly annoying. But fifth edition, what sort of mindsets does it push? So it pushes you can be whatever you want to the crazy level. Yeah. You can even take a dwarf, but he's not really sturdy and not really stout. He's actually super dexterous and lithe. It's like, okay, well, what the heck are you? So on top of that, I do think people say it brought D&D back away from the precipice of fourth edition, which I agree. It does bring back some, it harkens a little bit back to the older editions of the game. At least I've heard a lot of grognards say, and not Glenn, but a lot of grognards say they thought 5e was a lot closer to first and second edition than it was to fourth or third. I don't know about that. Maybe it's a feel thing.
Fourth for sure.
Fourth one, no other edition's like fourth. Fourth is different.
Third, well, no, I don't think so.
No.
Well, because it still carries the same dependence on stats, if not more. Depending on, because every stat is a saving throw.
Yes.
Early editions had very little reliance on stats. So I think it's closer to third than the others.
Huh. What do you think the game encourages, though, as a way, a style of play? Let's say a mindset. It tells you to do what?
I don't play it much, so I'm not sure.
Right.
It's not I look at if I have to think about it. So you go.
I think it has a little. I think you can argue it has a lot to do. It feels a little bit like I think third and first edition, a little bit mixed. You get these improvements every once in a while, not every level. Feats are toned down a lot in that you don't get 97 of them, but you do get them. And when you do or you can choose to have them, or you can have an ability bump. And if you choose a feat, you're going to get a lot of crap with it, more than even third, for the most part. But in terms of style of play, we talked about it once more. I think believe it or not, I think fifth really encouraged you. I think I agree. I think it encourages you to play WOTC's adventures. It wants you to play the WOTC adventures, not to create your own. Initially, they were gung-ho, and they've been Forgotten Realms since the beginning. It's all Forgotten Realms, and
it's very tied to the realms.
Yeah, and that's okay, but that's like kind of one thing. And I know folks can go, I played this version of 5e. Yes, you did it. I get it. And I'm sure there's folks that played, I don't know, a Dune version of 4e. So, you can do all sorts of stuff with the rules you want to.
Right.
But I'm not sure. I played once. I definitely get the feeling that characters are much more magical in 5e. They come off to me as even the warrior types, other than just a plain Jane fighter, everybody's got some stinking magic everywhere they turn.
Right. Even the fighter isn't anything like the first edition fighter, because the first edition fighter and the second edition fighter, if I remember correctly, except for maybe with splat books, they just swung a sword. They didn't have any abilities. They might have had specialization maybe in second edition.
Yeah.
Remember.
Specialization. But you get action surges as a fighter and a few other little things, I guess. But
you get depending on which type of because you can choose from three different kinds, at least in the player's handbook, three different kinds of fighters. And the one fighter they have a pool of points that you can use during combat to do things, and every time you get a short rest, you get them back.
Okay. Yeah.
So
the Battle Master, right? Battle Master.
You get powers.
You get some powers. Okay, so it's definitely so you can argue
they're not dramatic, but they're certainly more, and you don't get them at first level. I don't think you get that.
Third level is when you make that choice. Yeah. So I'm not sure flavor or feel how it's pushing. I'm not sure of the mindset of 5e, other than I would say I do think it encourages playing the WOTC stuff. I do think it encourages more magic. I don't think it necessarily encourages overpowered magic, but it definitely makes you feel invincible. Life is definitely not cheap. Life is absolute. Now you could say first or second could possibly be a little bit dangerous. I think it is. But once you get to third, once you get to fifth, for sure, it doesn't feel like you're dying.
No, I don't think so.
And even third edition, even the ones that complain about third edition being, oh, you could do all these crazy combos. I got news for you. You can bring your baddest combo that you have. I can still bring a monster out of the book. And if I roll a critical and I decide to change out one of his feats and give him improved critical, and he uses a katana. I mean, I could be, dude, 700 damage. How you like that 10th level fighter? I'll tell you how you like it. You're dead.
You're dead.
So, I mean, you could, what's good for the goof was good for the goose was good for the gander in third edition.
Oh, sure.
And
if you wanted to go through the trouble of doing all that, which can be a pain.
You can, and I did it some.
But, yeah.
In 5e, you don't get that. No. I don't get that feeling. You have to literally create whole cloth, and you have to whole cloth create a new monster with new powers and new abilities, which our buddy Philip does a good job of. I think I like how he creates monsters sometimes that do unique things. And if you don't, at least levels 1 to 10, folks, I feel that 5e is a guaranteed win button for the players. I do. I think so.
I have my complaints about 5th edition, and that's probably, it's like that, like what you said, with the suggested distribution of treasure.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have, in 3rd edition, you got the feeling that you needed to play the magic item game, where you got a lot of magic items, and that came from early editions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
but they hard
you play through the modules.
Mm-hmm.
You get all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, even 1st edition.
Yeah, the 1st and 2nd edition. Well, 1st edition especially. I don't know about 2nd edition. I think they got a little stingy.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But 1st edition modules, you got all kinds of stuff, artifacts. You might have to cut off your hand.
I tell you what I found in 3rd edition though, Joe, is I thought with magic items, I thought if you ran a module as is, I was never worried about giving the magic items out they had in there, except for the fact the players wouldn't want them. I hated that. That happened a lot. Oh, well, I got 6 magic items. Yeah, they all suck. We're going to sell them and make our own.
Right.
Oh, just that's such like a, I don't know. I just don't, because there were better options, and I'm not blaming the players. I think the game encouraged you to do that.
Right.
It was, now if you stuck to 3.0 and you said if you sold in your stuff, you only got half the value, that might be a less encouragement. But 3.5, I think, wasn't it in the rules that you could sell it for full price? I can't recall.
Oh,
it always half price.
In 3.0, it was half price, so it was less of a thing, I think, in 3.0 than in 3.5. But no, it depends. I think our experience with 3.5 and Pathfinder is a little colored by the way we handled the arena stuff.
True.
And we just said we didn't want it might have been a good idea considering how it ended up.
To have diminishing returns when you trade stuff in.
Diminishing returns, yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what about some of the other games I have listed there? In particular, let's talk about Warhammer. Do you think we played that just a tiny bit? That was gritty and dark. I think the idea was in that one, I thought you were definitely more of a 0 to start with, playing a rat catcher.
Sure, you were, and they had insanity rules. So
yeah,
whenever you met
life was cheap.
Particular, you could just go insane just from seeing a monster of some kind, and which makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it does perfect sense.
You imagine seeing a dog-sized spider.
Oh my gosh, that would just be terrifying. Yeah. And I think like a game like 13th Age, though, you definitely start out as hero. I mean, you are meant to be the saviors of the land. You start out and you're really good at first level. And I think the game is, in that game in particular, it's mostly, don't worry about it. You're not going to die. You're going to save the day. Things might get a little hairy, but you're pretty much going to win. Right. To me, that felt a little bit, it feels a little bit like that, 13th Age. And the OSR clones, I think OSR and their clones, they all pretty much model whatever edition of D&D they're cloning. But I can't be 100% sure. I mean,
I don't, we haven't played in any OSR yet. So
no, I've read
looked at it, heard people talk about it. It seems that OSR tries to emulate the very gritty dime a dozen character type thing. If you make it to second and third level, you've
accomplished something.
Accomplish something or you're lucky.
Yeah.
Either way.
Okay.
Shadow of the Demon Lord and Rolemaster, since they're kind of similar systems. I remember Rolemaster, like I said earlier, it was supposed to be an alternate set of rules for D&D, and then it became its own thing, and then it became a Middle Earth role playing.
I don't know how that went. I think Rolemaster was always its own game, but they said they could be picked. Are you sure?
It didn't start out that way. No.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
No, it started out specifically being a D&D, like spell law. Use this for D&D. All this stuff, because it didn't have its own setting, and it didn't have all the things for a complete system at first. I think maybe once they had some momentum, they went into their own thing. But I remember it being they use this for D&D.
Okay.
Right. But it was kind of gonzo in a way.
Rolemaster? Yeah. Well, I think Rolemaster lets you. The critical charts were pretty crazy. I mean,
very swingy.
If you roll well enough, you could. I think you get a lot of pretty plain. I don't know. I've not played it much, but I know if you rolled high, you get some pretty crazy results. I mean, you could win. It could be the win button. You kill somebody and take them out immediately. I don't think it was. I don't know. I can't speak to Rolemaster. I've played one game of it, so.
Right. It seems to me you have a lot of rolls where you just get some typical damage, and then you get a roll that's like, woof, break someone's arm, or puncture their spleen, or reduce their bones to jelly, stuff like that.
Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about D&D before we get into some other games?
No.
Okay, we're going to hit these a little bit different, and I grouped them in such a way I want to qualify. So I've got Savage Worlds, and I highlight that because that's what I've played. I've not played GURPS. I've not played Gurps-lite. I've not played the Cortex system, nor the Hero system.
I've played Hero.
Okay, so you can tell me how this differs. Let's focus on Savage Worlds first.
Yeah.
So I think mechanics are quick and they're simple. The fast, furious, fun mantra is real. I think it's usually pulpy, doesn't have to be. High action. You are the hero. You're the most important guy of the story. You're one of the most important guys of the story, but they do something funny. Life is dangerous. It is savage because the game is swingy. So you're starting out, you're Billy Badass to begin with. You are pretty darn good, but stuff can go sideways real quick.
Oh, sure.
And it can definitely, punch your ticket. I think the game, what I like about it, all these games are multi-genre, choose your genre type games. And Savage Worlds to me works best when you mix genres. I love the Deadlands because it's magic, undead with the Wild West, cops in space, Civil War era superhero type games, Victorian era monster hunters. They have these kind of mixed genres that kind of, I think, are the big draw. I don't know if that's the mindset, but the mindset is sort of pulpy action, but you better watch out because it can get ugly fast.
Right. The swinginess of it is definitely there. So as far as what kind of game mindset, I think when they say it, furious, fast, savage, all that stuff, that I think that they do for Savage Worlds, that's the kind of story, that's the kind of game you get.
Yeah. Two-fisted, man.
Yeah. You
get to do cool stuff. Characters often take monsters down quick, take their enemies down quick, and then sometimes the players go down quick.
I mean, it's swingy, so sometimes it can be a grind. It could be grindy because you don't get any aces. You just get typical damage, and a lot of times if you don't, it's not ace. What's the other one? You get a raise. If you don't get a raise on your hit, you don't do enough damage. It just it doesn't do anything. You do damage, but it's not enough to affect the target. So it can be a little grindy, depending on circumstances, but for an individual.
Yeah.
But for the table, it's not going to be that way.
No. And I think it encourages you to build the cool guy that you wanted to build. This is kind of unique. This is kind of different, and he's going to be cool. And it does require you to be very imaginative, because if you just play, and I complain about this a lot, when someone has a spell, it's called powers in the game. So you cast a spell called
Bolt.
What's bolt? I hate when the players say I cast bolt. No, describe it, add trappings. That's the intention. Otherwise, it's way too generic. You got to say, you see a arc of red lightning shoot out of my hand,
Right.
and I blast this guy in the chest and shakes him to his foundation. That's the bolt power.
You said lightning? This guy's immune to lightning.
Correct, but that's okay if you
And
don't.
that's the way it's supposed to work.
That is supposed to be that way, and I just find it that I think the game wants you to do cool stuff, add little wrinkles with edges and hindrances, drawbacks, and your character's pretty solid, but don't get too comfortable because things can get bad. Life is dangerous. Life is savage in those games, for no doubt. How would you describe the hero system? I think GURPS.
It has been a long time since I've played. I remember having fun. I remember it being a little different from D&D. I played it after I got into the Army. One of the groups I played with, they liked the hero system. We played champions as well.
Is it fiddly?
It's a little fiddly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I really don't remember it that well.
Okay. I know we have some fellow friends of ours who are not big fans of GURPS. I have no comment on GURPS, but I just put them in there as the generic universal role-playing system. That's what it's called, and Savage Worlds is a generic one too.
I've never played it. Do you remember this from back in the day? The GURPS folks kind of looked down their nose at the D&D folks.
Yes, I got that some.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because GURPS is more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Quote unquote more complicated. So smart.
I got more realistic.
Yeah, stuff like that. So when back in the day when you got that, you were like, well, GURPS sucks, because you're just going to say that, even though you've not played it, because
right.
you're getting looked at a particular way.
Okay, here's some other games, and of course, what I did in our notes, I capitalized what I consider the flagship of the game title, and it's mainly because this is what I would probably like over the others. Rifts. I put inside Rifts games like Toon, Paranoia, Gamma World. Over the Edge, which I've never played, it's defined as a fantastic cornucopia of fringe science, conspiracy, and hyper reality. And this is a game. Rifts, of course, is. And these other games can be this too. I remember Gamma World being like this. Gonzo for sure. That's the first word I think of. Post-apocalyptic, crazier the PC, the better. No limits. You can be whatever you can. You can play a dragon. You can play a godling in Rifts.
Yes.
And I think it's all about Gonzo powers, doing crazy stuff. Honestly, it's one of the coolest settings that I have a hard time running. Not just because of the rules, but just the whole, because I have a savage version of it.
Right.
But yeah.
I think I recently was wanting to get back into Palladium, because that's where Rifts comes from.
Yeah.
Palladium. And they all have a common set of rules. They're slightly different depending on what you get into, but not much. But
Palladium Fantasy, right? There were 2 editions of that. I never played. Did you play that Palladium Fantasy?
I don't remember playing it. I remember.
Okay.
I remember I have it, and I remember I might have played it a little bit in the Army, but it's been a long time.
Are you saying you'd be itching to try that game again?
Well, I was looking at it to see, because Rifts, to me, the way I've looked at it for the longest is great setting.
Yep.
I really love the Rift setting, but the rules I never really cared for, and that's Palladium. And then I recently, that's years thinking that way, and then I went on YouTube, and there's these fellows that really like Rifts and Palladium in general. So I thought, well, maybe I didn't give it a good, a fair shake.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking at the rules, and I'm still, it's not that much different from D&D, really.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean,
our
boys, Patrick and Jeff, they both, they love the crap out of some Palladium Fantasy.
It's class and level.
Yeah. True. I do think the games, I don't know about Palladium Fantasy, but I do know those games there that I listed definitely push. They're almost all they're all post-apocalyptic, I think. Even Paranoia, it's dystopian future, right?
Sure.
And so I think crazier the better is right. I mean, in Paranoia, where it says, you know, you're a member of the computer, sends you on the missions, you're supposed to root out all these mutants and members of different secret factions. And guess what? You're a mutant or a member of a secret faction.
Right.
So it's pretty crazy. So I think that game just encourages your imagination should run wild.
Right.
You know?
Oh, I think that Vampire in World of Darkness is a little different. Maybe even call of
Oh, those are separate categories.
Okay. You've got these kind of indented funny.
Yeah. Sorry about that. So yeah, my next group is Call of Cthulhu, and I put in Trail of Cthulhu, which I don't know much about, and then Alien the RPG, and then I put Vampire and World of Darkness, but I think it might be its own category. So Cthulhu, you're playing paranormal investigators facing off against dark gods or dark things that man was not meant to know, and it's all about the struggle. You're not going to win.
No.
Get that out of your system right now. You might stave off the darkness for a while. You might keep Cthulhu back for a few more years, but if he comes through, dude, everything's going pear-shaped. It's over.
And even if he doesn't, you're going to go insane.
Yeah, and sometimes when you win, the price is you go crazy, or die horribly. And you may save the world, but you'll die horribly. I don't think that's the same. I do think Alien. We haven't played it yet, though. On CabinCon, we're going to be playing it. And I think there's a lot of advantage to it. I do think Alien gives a little bit of a vibe of that, because when you run into aliens, you can fight them, but man, that's a tall order.
And it also depends on how many. So if you've got a queen and she's pumping out those eggs, then you're going to have a lot of them.
Yeah, and you start, when you get to more than one of them, you get a brood of them, then you start talking about body horror. I mean, that comes in when you get an egg inside. That is horrific. That first scene in Alien, the first movie, when I saw that, I was like, my chest was like, oh, dude.
Oh, yeah.
And it's it's definitely got this just things that you can't understand. They truly are alien, and all they want to do is impregnate you with an egg and go into your chest so they can burst out and become a new alien. So
it's a little rapey.
It can be. Whereas Vampire, and this is kind of a knock, so I'm just going to say it. You play these dark, brooding, emo PCs. They have to fight the monster within, or whether they're going to join it, because they're all vampires. Or in the broader sense, you could be a mage or werewolf. But with Vampire, it's kind of a political game, and it's also studying your own, figuring out who you actually are. It's definitely dark. And so I connect it to Cthulhu in terms of the darkness, but your character is the one that's dark. It's not that you're fighting. Maybe you're fighting the darkness that's in you, right? That's the idea of Vampire.
Yeah.
Maybe. And I don't know. It just feels.
Maybe you may not be fighting it. I mean, the problem is there. I know the earlier version of the game that I played a little bit of in Germany when I was stationed there. You had a humanity stat, and you had to watch it, or it would go away. And you didn't want that to happen.
Well, I think because they changed the GM's name to storyteller, I thought they were trying to push more of a story, and maybe they are. A lot about interpersonal struggles and things like that. I mean, for me, it's hokey's not the word. It just sounds like something I don't want to get into.
Right.
Seems a little bit like probably, it seems like there could be a lot of psychobabble going on in there. So.
Well, and I think and maybe you, have a different feel for it, because back in the day, folks who played Vampire, they were a little weird. A lot
of those LARPers were, yeah.
Yeah, they would LARP their Vampire game in public, and it wasn't, they would be in public in a bar or something, and all, right. And then you'd hear. I remember hearing about the interpersonal conflicts within the group, and you're like, is that what you do? Go around and harangue each other or whatever?
No. And they'd be like, I saw one guy one time, he waves his arms back and forth like scissors in front of his face, and he's yelling, obfuscate, obfuscate, obfuscate. And I was like, what? And so, but it's like, look, to be fair, whatever floats your boat, dude.
Sure.
If you're not hurting anybody, I don't care. I mean, I'm not going to totally poop on it. And I played once or twice. It doesn't, not the live action stuff, just the tabletop. am not into it. No thanks.
I'd much more be interested in playing the folks hunting down the vampires.
Right.
Than
But from
being
what I've
the
heard,
vampires.
in the game though, the hunters are at a big disadvantage. You're really kind of weak sauce compared to the vampires and the werewolves and mages.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that game has got a dark game. Cthulhu is a dark game.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like in Cthulhu, you're trying to hold back the tide. In the vampire, you are part of the tide. Maybe you're holding it back. Maybe you're letting it go. And you're dealing with political machinations of all the clans and stuff, which some folks like that part of it. They like the chess, the mental chessboard challenge. And they feel like they're really in a live action game of diplomacy, which is
right. Well, because they're juggling. Well, this is my food, but I have to coexist because vampires do have a lot of weaknesses. They have to sleep at night, and they have to sleep during the day, and they're totally vulnerable during the day. So they have to, they are very defenseless when they're sleeping.
And I think travel's challenging. You tend to stay in one city. If you come into a new city, so you come to Chicago, you better know who the prince is.
Right.
Because you better not feed indiscriminately.
Right.
I mean, you could, piss off the big vampire,
which, and get yelled at for 2 hours in game.
That would suck. All right. Another style of game. I call these highly narrative games. Fate is the poster child, of which everybody knows by now I despise. I despise it. It's probably the creator more than the game, but the game's not my favorite. Dungeon World, Blades in the Dark, Genesys. These games attempt to produce a more story type element. Sometimes, I think a lot of times there's very low mechanics, very few of the mechanics, though I think the Genesys game where Star Wars Edge of the Empire, they use the funky dice, which could argue it's a little complicated. Storytelling to the max. Like in Fate, you have aspects. I think those are sentences that describe you, not actual numbers. And you can compel those as the game master. So if Joe was like, I have trouble with alcohol. So in one scene, his investigator's trying to find something out, and the lady he's talking to, who might be up to no good, offers him a drink. He has a hard time turning away, and he drinks. He goes, "Would you like another? Would you like another?" And I could compel Joe to do that. And if Joe, I think I got this right. If Joe agrees, he keeps drinking until he gets drunk, but I give him a fate chip.
Right.
And he gets to use that. Yeah, he gets to use that chip to affect the story. One of the problems, I think that game encourages, it feels like those kind of games require a group mentality that has to pretty much be right on the same page, trying their best to tell the same story, and willing to just do things so the story sounds cool, not because necessarily they would want to do that. Yeah, Joe's like, I'm going to drink even though I'd really like not to. I'd much rather find out what she's up to, but I'm going to do that because in a good book, it's really cool if the detective gets drunk and gets knocked out and he's left at the scene of the crime and, oh my gosh, he killed someone else, and look at that, I'm here with a gun in my hand.
Right.
And so, that's...
So I guess they made a Fate version of the Dresden book, right? It's Fate. And Dresden is the ultimate of doing that. He puts his foot in it the whole book until the end when he pulls it all together.
Right. Which basically, I mean, to me, it feels like in Fate, you really got a heavy dose of story time at the table. Having said that, the mechanics are okay. I just don't know. It just feels like I'd love to see, I don't want to watch people play it, but I just can't imagine I would enjoy that for much more than maybe one night. If
I don't like story time as a game.
No, I don't as much either. And Dungeon World's got all the player facing dice, and it's a little less story gamey. Blades in the Dark is I don't know much about that, but it definitely falls in the Powered by the Apocalypse games, that and Dungeon World. They tend to be more story driven.
A while back in my quest for a good podcast, I listened to this one, and they were always talking about Blades in the Dark and other Powered by the Apocalypse games, and they all sounded dumb. Not played any of them.
Yeah. I played Dungeon World, and I enjoyed my time playing it at Gen Con. I bought it thinking I would like it. Of them all, Dungeon World would be the one that I would I may one day bring that to the table at CabinCon, just for an experience, because it is pretty D&D-ish. Blades in the Dark, I think you play a group of basically underworld people. Yeah, and that doesn't sound good to me. But the point is, these are story games, and I think people have to have a mindset that is, look, we're here to tell a cool story. It's not about the cool powers my character has.
Right.
It's really not. You know?
Well, only if those cool powers serve the story.
Correct. And when they don't, you have to really let bad things happen to your character. You got to really kind of do dumb stuff, which, you know, I kind of get that. I think if you're playing a character, even in D&D, if I'm playing a dumb fighter, I'm going to do dumb stuff. That's fine. I mean, I'm not going to try to destroy the party, but every once in a while, I'm going to be like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to dive into the water. I think it's a cool sword down there. I see a glimmering sword. I'm going to go dive into it.
Right.
And Joe's wizard's like, it's acid. Yeah, it is.
No more stupid fighter.
Right. My next fighter will be smarter. Now, the ones that I think take it to the next level or the next category, Amber Diceless being the poster child.
I've only read about that one.
I made a character for that.
What's the point?
First year in grad school. We never played, but the character got made. You succeed at what you're attempting if the game master decides that it's true or the player is more convincing. So you try something, it's kind of a back and forth of narrative argument. I did not think that sounded good, but it was a new friend I'd made. He was going to run it. He never did. And I thought I would try that. In that game, and that little paragraph I have, look at the bottom, it says, you have stats, and a stat of 18 is better than a 17, but it's a lot better than a 10. And that's all the guidance you get. It's better than that. So it doesn't really mean anything. And it's based on what's it called? The Amber Chronicles by Roger Zelazny.
The system is?
Well, yeah, it's Amber. It's based on that.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah, that's the exact one. Then you have some variants of this. So Amber's like truly diceless. So to me, it seems no cards, there's no random element to the game. It's all a back and forth. So, yeah.
I guarantee you can simulate the story. I've not read the Amber series,
right?
The novels, but I guarantee you could emulate that with a system that had dice. I'm sure. Oh,
no doubt. That's just where that's the setting, the property they use to make the game with. It doesn't interest me. There's another game called Everway. I didn't do much research into that. I think that's pretty low mechanics. I think it uses cards. The Saga system, not to be confused with Star Wars Saga, by TSR. They did Dragonlance, the Fifth Age, and they did Marvel Superheroes Adventure Game. Both of them used that system. That was a card-based system, very narrative. I remember buying the Marvel one and just not grokking it because it was way too, I don't know, story. I can't even remember. Anybody out there knows how those work? That's great. I lumped them in there because I remember them being confusing to me when I was young.
I somehow acquired a Dragonlance
Fifth Age box.
Yeah, the little. I don't know if I still have it, but I did acquire one, and I tried to. I opened it up and looked at it a little bit, and then lost interest because I was never really a big Dragonlance fan anyway.
It wasn't just that; the way the game played was so weird. But to me, that was kind of all the categories and mindsets I come up with from games. You know, I grouped them basically D&D fantasy style, Savage Worlds being generic, Rifts being apocalyptic gonzo, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire being dark, Fate being fairly narrative, and then Amber being super narrative. Is there any categories you think I missed or anything else you want to say about those?
Probably not. Probably are good. I can't imagine. I mean, there are lots of games you don't have listed here, but I'm sure they could fall into here. Like something I've listened to, heard several people talk about recently, Battle Lords of the 23rd Century. That's a highly detailed, super crunchy game, or super, as far as I've heard. I don't have it, and I don't know for sure, but it seems like it is. And that's probably you could put that in Rifts, or you could probably put that with something similar to third edition, considering.
Yeah, I think Jason at Nerds RPG Variety Cast, he he was talking about it. I didn't get through that whole episode. I think he was trying to say it worked really well with Stargate. He thought it would work really well as a Stargate.
Yes.
And it's pretty crunchy. I don't know. I wonder if there are games that try to be a lot more simulationist that really have a, every little I mean, I've heard GURPS was super detailed, but again, I've never played it, so I can't say.
Well, I heard an interview of one of the people who did the most recent edition, and he and his group of folks that revised it are all like ex-military gun people. Okay. And so, which I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, because you like guns a lot, you know a lot about guns, and you are good with them. That doesn't necessarily mean you can make a good game based off of it. And if you put too many and he was talking about, well, we did all these things based on what we know about guns,
right?
Like, you get too, I mean, people may like it. I'm sure there are plenty of people who like a heavily simulationist type game,
right?
But I don't know. I have to play it.
Yeah, true. All right. So, but I think, I mean, again, and to me, I think games try to put you in a mindset. Whether you get there or not, they absolutely do. Out of the box, in the book, they want you to adopt a mindset, and they're trying to encourage styles of play.
Right.
Maybe a couple styles for each one. Now, let's talk a little bit different now. We're going to switch gears in the second part. We're going to talk about gamer mindsets. So these habits, let's read the definition again. A habitual or characteristic mental attitude that determines how you interpret and respond to situations. So a characteristic or mental attitude that players have and how they respond to situations that crop up in the game. Right? That's the idea. And so I just listed a bunch here. And some of them are on purposely meant to be counter. Some people have, I mean, I don't know, should we read through these?
Let me read through these.
Through these. Good deal. Yeah.
All right. So GM presents challenges and the PCs overcome them, and thus the GM must have balanced encounters. That's kind of a third edition mindset.
Yep.
But I think gamers have that. I think they adopted that. I don't know if it's something that happened. It was something before or not, but I know people will say stuff like, "That's way over," and I've said it. That's way over our level.
Yeah.
Is that appropriate?
Right. I never had any players say, "Is that appropriate?" But back in the old days, say pre-second, even second edition or older, maybe second edition, but definitely pre-second edition, I had players who would say that wasn't a fair encounter. There's no way you put us in a no-win situation. I've heard that. Whether it was directed at me or another DM, I don't remember, probably me. So yeah, I mean, I think there was the idea of that, but it was really hard to quantify, So, I mean, and they had no way to, they couldn't say, you broke this rule.
Right.
And that was really hard. And I'd be like, yeah. And my response could easily be, you should have ran.
Yeah.
So.
Hence, the world is open and dangerous. You never know what you might encounter. That's old school. And
that's where Joe, I think you and I can say, unless I'm wrong, that's where you and I are at.
Yeah.
I'm fully in that camp now.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to kill players. And most encounters, my plan will be for you to be able to deal with it some way, but it may not be with fisticuffs and swords and spells.
Right.
You have to talk your way out of things. A little talky. Yeah.
GM's God in his world, his game, his rules. Mm-hmm. And that could be any edition. So
correct.
That's a player. That's a GM who's a player.
And it can also be a player. We got a friend we had, this guy, Greg D. Remember him? He said that before. He agreed. He said, as a player, I think the DM is God. And I think players have that. And I think GMs do. Most people would say that would be taken as, oh, that GM is on a power trip. Maybe not. Maybe he's like, look, this is my world. I'm running it the way I want to. I'm going to want you to have a good time in it, but I'm making all the ground rules.
Right.
And many players, and that was kind of the deal in old school D&D. Pre-third edition, there weren't too many players going to complain about that.
No. I think right now, with the emphasis on everybody at the table having the same amount of say-so, I think it's kind of wrong. But
that's the next one, right?
The GM is just a player. in the game like everyone else.
Right. I
He is
disagree with
bound
that.
to the fate of the rule book as well. No, I'm going to say no. I mean, there's
No.
people that believe that,
Yep.
but no.
And if the interwebs are to be believed, and in comments, there are plenty of people, I've heard them say, well, the GM says something like that, I'm out. I'm walking. I would walk. As soon as the player said, GM said that, I walked. Or as soon as the player said that, I walked. Look, we all share this. It's not, he's not above the rules. I got news for you. He is.
Yeah.
It's that simple. He makes the rules. Now, you don't have to play. You can vote with your legs. You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
I've not had that experience much.
Right.
I've had just a couple players leave my table because they thought I was doing something they didn't like in my whole life. And I've DM'd well over 100 players, probably closer to 200. So
Probably more.
Probably more, maybe 500.
Considering convention play.
Oh gosh, when you think about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? Couple hundred for sure.
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying, I think it depends. I think I understand the desire. And I think sometimes even I want to think I'm just a player at the table. And I've come a long way with this idea of, you talk about narrative control, letting players have a little control of the world. And I'm willing to, but in the end, I have to have the final say because it's my game. And I don't mean that like it's not your game too, but I'm the one designing everything. I'm doing all the really heavy lifting. So I'm getting the final say. And the DM should. The buck's got to stop somewhere.
Right.
But I mean, if you say everybody follows by the rules, then I guess you could. Our Elysium game was a little more like that. Right. I won't say I felt handcuffed, but I felt a little bit more obligated to follow rules.
Yeah, it was a weird experiment. I think, considering it was our attempt at organized play, which is really what it was.
It was.
And I think it's a bad idea.
Now I do, but I do think our new experiment with Dragon 8, with the Dragon Empire, I'm going to run 2 6th-level adventures at Captain Con for 13th Age. I think that's going to be much more manageable because we're really going to keep all the meta story super on the down low,
right? And
just run adventures and let things be what they are.
It's one thing to agree to, like, have a couple of DMs agree to run games in the same game world and try to coordinate a little bit. It's another thing to organize the play of several dozen, or in the case of other groups, hundreds or thousands of people. I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
You're trying to homogenize everybody's play experience, and you really should probably just not do that. So
of those two statements, a lot of these I put in the counter. GM is God, is his rules, his game, his rules, versus he's just a player. You definitely, I don't like the phrase GM is God, but it is his rules. I mean, if he wants to do the weirdest, wackiest stuff, he can do it. He may have no players, but he can.
Right.
I mean, really, if it bothers you that much, you won't play, right?
Right. The thing is, what we should be doing is gravitating toward players that you are comfortable playing with.
Yeah, I think so.
And so I've had lots of different weird experiences over the years with people running their games kind of like a 70s fantasy movie.
Right.
Some of them are fun, but there are lots of cringe in those movies, and so then I just move on to somebody else.
Gotcha.
So you find someone that you enjoy playing with, and you're like, if you don't like what someone's doing, you can complain about it. It's free, whatever. Say what you want, whatever. But what I do is I move on.
And like it comes back to what Joe loves to say. You're playing with your pals. If I was sitting with you and Philip and David and Tim, we're gonna play 3rd edition. That's cool. And you guys like, Randy, I'm like, I'm thinking maybe I might do this. You're like, we were hoping we'd like to run the rules exactly as written. We'd like to be pretty as close to raw as we can. Would you be cool with that? And I'd be like, yeah, I'll do it. I won't do any Randy stuff. I'll run it as written, and the dice will fall, and I'm just going to let it go.
Right.
and we'll just play the rules. And if I'm wrong about something, we'll fix it next time. But I'm not going to try to like make lots of calls and make up new things. I don't like how grappling works. Nope. We're going to play it. Got to make a touch attack, blah, blah, blah. And that's how we're going to do it. So yeah, I can be convinced to do that. But if I'm like running my game, I get inspired. I don't think, man, I did it one time, think this would be cool to screw Joe. So I'm going to do magic this way. Screw his wizard.
Yes.
But I don't really do that. I think this would be a neat story. Wouldn't it be cool if there were no magic weapons at all? You could not find magic. Magic weapons could not be made, and they had to struggle maybe to figure out why. And maybe I had a reason why they couldn't be made. And the story was to figure out what it is and maybe fix it if that's what the players want to do. That sounds really harsh, but that's not necessarily a bad idea for a campaign.
No.
It's not a bad idea. Now, maybe stuff no one wants to play, but like, I'm just talking, it can be just magic weapons. There's no magic axes. There's no magic swords, no magic bows. There's rings and there's cloaks, but for some reason, weapons can't be magicked. So, I wouldn't do that, but I'm saying you could. And most of us as friends would be like, if we really want to play the game, let's give it a whirl, see what happens.
Sure.
What about the next two?
Player agency is paramount. No railroading at all. I would say I don't like railroading.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the feel that making a choice is worth having. You have a choice, you can make a choice, and it affects the game. It's not just some kind of illusory thing where
I'm being a little hyperbolic, by the way.
Sure. It's a little hyperbolic.
Yeah.
So I'm not. Some people consider if the DM says where you even start out in that day as railroading. Right. So
you're gathered at the local temple. I wouldn't go to a temple. I don't care who it is.
Right. But this is your religion. I don't want to go there right now. So there. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think railroading
has problems.
Has problems, but player agency, as far as if you can take it to the point where the player agency trumps even the DM's rule, and you don't want that either.
It's to the absurd level.
Right.
Honestly, if you and I lean more toward DM is God, then he's just another player. And I'm just saying lean toward. Mm-hmm. We're not going to lean toward player agency above all. But the other one's the flip side in a hyperbolic way, right?
The next one down?
Yeah.
We're here to play a game, run a module, play an adventure, or get on the train. It's leaving the station. I've done that.
I know.
We've played modules.
And I've had a great time.
Yeah. But we all bought into it.
Yeah.
We didn't have a session 0 where we're ready. No. It was like, is it okay? Can we please run this module? Do I have your permission?
Can I run Temple of Elemental Evil? No, it's like, that's what we're playing. If you want to play this, great. If not, let's go shoot some hoops. I don't give a
buying in means fine. Okay, let's play. Did you have fun? Yeah, it was great.
I'm glad I bought in. Yeah. And of course, the real answer is somewhere in between this. As a DM, I would think a good DM would give players plenty of choice, or at least to my mind, the illusion of choice. Because even if you're running the Temple of Elemental Evil, it doesn't have to run like it did the first 7 times you played it.
Right.
Let the players do some crazy.
Yeah. You can move some rooms around. And, when you're running the old school modules, once you did the introductory, you go where you need to go to get hooked in.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty open-ended. You've got a door in front of you, but you don't have to go to the door. You can look around and see what the rest of the lay of the land is. And there's nothing making you go a particular way, taking a particular path through the dungeon, unless there's only one way, which they didn't work that way. You can turn left, right, or go straight a lot. So just having a dungeon ready for you to explore isn't really a railroad, I guess. But it can seem that way to some people these days who think that, they should just be able to choose everything.
Well, and in your busy life, let's be honest, if I'm like, if we agree one week, hey, we're going to play Pathfinder and Randy's going to run Rise of the Rune Lords. So I prep burnt offerings. I mean, and you know me, I go way ahead. So I would probably prep the whole module and have it completely ready, knowing we're only going to cover maybe a sixth of it in one session.
Right.
So I have it all prepped, and then you guys show up and you go, we're gonna leave Sandpoint and we're gonna head south and go to another town today.
Yeah.
I mean, I could wing it. We could probably still play, but in my mind, I'm thinking, you dirty turds.
Yeah.
That was not. Yeah, come on. What is that?
Right.
You know. So
we have spoken.
Yeah. Okay. And you can say that the players have
Yeah.
spoken, but you know what you're probably going to encounter in the woods, don't you?
A dragon.
Yeah. Yes, an ancient red who
Yeah.
wants to eat all of you.
Yeah.
Does he? Yeah, he really does. He wants to eat you, 6 characters in particular. Roll initiative. Oh, wits don't bother. You're dead. Yeah. Now the others, I don't think I have paired up as much. So tackle those
Right.
however you will.
Yeah. So no restrictions on characters, feats, alignments, splat books. All player ideas are perfectly fine and valid. That's the kind of style. There's a lot of
It
people
is.
who think that whatever they bring to the table, they should be able to run.
Mhm.
And on any given day, I can agree with that.
And I think that marries well, though. And I think I'm with you. I think it's okay if these are the books we're using, versus I'm not cool when someone said, I found this splat book or this third party book that lets me play this type of character, especially third party book. He's got to get my okay. But even an official book, if you're the only one that has Candlekeep Mysteries and it's got this cool couple of feats and you want to use them and I've never seen them, I'm going to be like, you really should check with me before you do that. I'm not completely cool with you just doing whatever the hell you want.
Right.
Now, if we all say, look, anything, we've done that with Elysium, anything official in Pathfinder 1 was a go.
Yeah.
Every official thing was fair.
Yeah.
So I think that can work well. I think it marries itself pretty closely to the idea, though, that the DM is just a player, though, there. Kind of approach. It can. Yeah. I think a player that has the mindset that the DM is just a player would probably almost 100% agree with that.
Sure.
Guessing.
Yeah. The GM might be fine with anything.
True. Well, the player.
Bring it. I can handle it.
Oh, yeah. Which generally I have that philosophy. I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah.
If I had and I'm not opposed to the idea that the GM has to be a player. I don't think. I mean, he's just a player.
Right.
Now, if we have to come to group consensus for everything that happens at the game, that's not going to work out.
Right.
But if it's like you got to follow the rules, okay, I could be very convinced to do that. Now, once I find it less than fun, or if I don't like how this works, if we change this, and you guys are like, no, I'd be like, this might be a problem. Right. I'm not going to keep running a game where I find a handful of rules to be terribly distasteful.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So, yeah.
Next is building an elaborate backstory is paramount to a good game experience.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of people who love that giant background.
I know, 5 pages. Read this, GM.
And I prefer a line or two, and I build on it as time goes by.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most effective way to play today with the time that we generally set aside for playing. However, as a GM, if someone writes me a 5-page backstory, unlike a lot of people, I would read it.
Mm-hmm.
If someone they got to give me more than 10 minutes before the start of the game. But if someone texts that to me or emails me, the 5-page backstory, I'll read it because I'll want to mine it for nuggets.
Right.
Especially I'm expecting them to have stuff for me to like, oh, his sister really hates him. She was the Archmage's favorite tutor or favorite student who the Archmage didn't really like him very much, but really liked his sister. And they've never been close since. And I'll be like, wow, fodder for me to do cool things.
Right.
His sister can be an enemy. So, yeah.
GM is the enemy. Adversarial GM. I am trying to kill your character. As if there's any real way to stop the GM. He can just say,
right,
you've died of a cardiac arrest. Imagine that.
Right. But you can have that. But could you have, I'm thinking a lesser extent, could I play, we did it. I think I could take an adversarial role without being unfair.
You could.
And some players would like that. They're like, I want the DM to do everything in his power. I want the DM to try to kill me. So here's what I mean by that. When you face 4 orcs You might just get captured if you get knocked down. But if you face 4 ghouls, they're going to eat you.
Right.
And they're not going to make exceptions because your character's Nito and has 5 pages of background.
Right. Right.
So to me, it's like that can be a GM who is playing the enemy versus being the enemy. Some folks would say being the enemy is always trying to kill you, screw your player. That's a problem. And that mindset, GM as the enemy, can be as much, I think, as much the player as I think it's a lot of times it's more the player. I've felt like the players were against me a lot, meaning they were.
Oh, really?
I mean, not recently, but in the past, I had felt like players were like I really hate this, and Joe does not do this. Okay, we're going to enter the room, but first we're going to make a plan. And if I go to the bathroom, that's when they make the plan. And what are you guys going to do? Wait and see. I hate that because to me as a GM, I get to know all the stuff. You don't get to keep secrets from me. But part of me says, well, this will be fun because then I won't react. I won't be biased in my reactions. And if it's done in good nature and not something you do all the time, I can live with it.
Right. Sometimes I think about, and I don't know if we've even done this yet, knowing versus not knowing things.
We haven't done that yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that'll be a good
known
discussion.
and the unknown. So you got to wonder sometimes if you're the DM, how much, if you know everything, can you be fair?
Correct.
And there's such thing as fair in the games. Can you be fair? Can you be reasonable? And same thing with the players.
Yep.
The character doesn't know what the player knows. The player doesn't sometimes know what the character knows because you're not the character really. But if you like, I know none of the characters I play know how to drive a car in D&D.
Right. Correct.
But I do. So if they somehow stepped through a portal and was in a modern setting, they're not going to know anything about cars. They're going to not even know what it is.
Yeah, they'll probably think it's a vehicle because it has wheels.
Yeah.
They're not sure what to do. I do think the DM on that fair versus unfair thing, I think sometimes too, and this is getting off in that discussion, maybe we shouldn't. I'm just thinking whenever a DM is fair, he could be unfair by being too generous to the players. That's a cool plan. And like, it's pretty cool. You snuck in through the gutters. Okay. That's, or through the pipes into the building. But the main bad guy, he's got a master's degree in engineering. And he's an evil, psychotic supervillain, but he would be like, and he knows you, if he knew you were coming, he wouldn't be shocked by you sneaking up through the gutter. Or at least there's a reasonable chance he figured it out.
And
he's super smart.
You think you've snuck up on him, but he has a proximity alarm, a silent proximity alarm set up in the gutter just for that.
But a GM that always errs from the side of the player will just think, good idea. You beat my challenge, you win. Other than saying, you know what, that's the time you should roll as a GM. Try to figure out, maybe he does have a shot at knowing they're coming.
And it's going to depend on the villain too.
Yeah.
So yes, we are creating a shared story. Rule of cool. Is the only thing that matters.
Right.
When you're at the table, you are creating a shared story. The story emerges as you play. Rule of cool is the only thing that matters.
I like the rule of cool. They do. And I think like a game like 13th Age encourages that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it can be too much rule of cool.
Right.
Anything to make any sort of justification to get you guys out of a sticky situation. Yeah. Yeah. That can be players people definitely have that mindset.
Right. PCs should only die at appropriately dramatic moments. Yeah, that's a thing too, but I don't agree.
No, I don't either. I think I think if you wanted to, we've talked about this. Could you play at a game, Joe, if I said, look, I am not going to kill your character unless 1, it's dramatically appropriate, and 2, you agree with it?
I mean, you're going to run a game I'm going to play.
I know, but would you now?
I would be less than satisfied, probably.
You would not find that very, okay.
Because mainly because I'm going to know it's going to be a kind of a powder puff game.
Gotcha. Even in a game like, say, okay, we're going to make up 9th level 3rd edition characters, and you're going to spend 3 hours making your character. And I say, I promise you, I'm not going to kill you unless it's dramatically appropriate. Versus your wizard shows up. Oh, look, sneak attack by the 4th level kobold rogue. Oh, crit. You're dead.
Right.
And
Right. Well, so right. So I get what you're saying. I just think knowing that up front kind of ruins it a little bit.
I agree. Could I do it without you catching on? I think I probably could.
Probably could. It would depend.
Yeah.
It would really depend. I mean, the kind of situations where it would be obvious probably won't happen. So
no, true.
Your character does not matter until he gets to the table.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Not really.
Okay. So the idea is that it's kind of the counter to the backstory guy. What your character did before the game is irrelevant.
Oh, gotcha.
And some player, and like you talked about, you like to have a line or two. Some folks have nothing.
Right.
The aforementioned Greg D has said, I have very little idea what my character is till I'm playing. I'll figure it out at the table.
Right.
So that's what I'm. Yeah, I think that's fine too.
Yeah.
I have really little or no issue. I think that's one problem with that is that in a campaign where you want to develop a lot of, if you're hoping to do more than dungeon crawl, it may be that your character has less to do initially, because if someone else in the group wrote a 5-page backstory, I'm probably telling more of their story. It's like you noticed, and this is not really, I'm going to say it's unfair, but it's almost unstoppable. My wife and I, before a campaign, we tend to talk a lot. And she will, while she won't write her background, she'll give me an elaborate story. And I think I tend to have games that tend to center a lot, at least initially, around Debbie's character. And that's because she's told me so much about her.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And you can say, well, it's your wife. Maybe, but I don't think so. I think it's because I know about her. And I go, oh, that'd be a cool hook. And I'm like, I don't know anybody else's character. That's what I'll start with.
Right.
But that means, but I should pay attention. You know, Joe's coming blank slate wizard dude. And then he's like, oh, that was a pretty cool piece of information about necromancy. My wizard's very much wants to study necromancy so we can counter that magic. And any little bit of necromancy, I'm into learning about it. And so I should try to play off that.
Right.
You know, as you feed me that information. So yeah, I think that's fine.
Let's just roll dice and kill stuff. I'm almost always of that opinion.
Really?
Almost.
Interesting.
But
okay.
it's not the whole. It's not the whole. It's when it comes down to it, that's what we want to do. That's what I want to do.
Right.
But it's not the whole thing. So I also want to get engaged with the scenario, role play a little bit, solve the problem, save the day, blah, 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 blah.
But that's the main thing.
Yeah. Because
I think it's the heart of the game, combat. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how interested I am in a game that doesn't have a good combat rules.
And sometimes it's that way because you're stressed out, and rolling dice and killing stuff takes care of a bit of your stress.
I was going to say, sometimes it's the time of the day.
Yeah.
Or the day of the week. Or the time of the month. Yeah.
Time
of the month. Yeah. So this next one is kind of a little bit of the other side of this.
Yeah. What is my motivation in this scene?
Yeah. That can be okay where players like, I don't go to the dungeon because it's there. That's not why I go.
Right.
And why would I want to help the farmer's daughter? Because I'm good alignment. Okay, maybe that should be enough. I'm good. I'll do it, even if you do it begrudgingly. But if you're like, I don't know this farmer. I'm a neutral warrior. He ain't paying me nothing. He ain't got nothing. Why would I do this? That's when it gets, I need to pull you in to make you do something. I ain't working that hard.
Right. There's a little bit of that that's fun to do.
Yes,
a little bit. But I mean, I don't know anybody that has been that way, but I know you have a story about that you've told a couple times.
I have. I won't tell it again, but yeah, I have.
But Yeah.
I think it's fun to play the reticent guy. It's like, man, maybe we shouldn't do this. And I think I've seen you do it, but you can tell that you're like, you just say that for the role play part, and then you're like, okay, I'll do it real quickly. Anything somebody says convinces you. Fine,
Right,
fine.
right.
I
And
hate the idea.
and I'll often say that. You guys, I don't say the words, but
Right.
when I'm role playing, I say it in a way that anybody should be able to pick up that will be pretty easy to convince me. You just got to say a couple of things.
You just want to play a little canteen.
I don't really need convincing. I'm just role playing.
Yeah, and my guy's coming. Just tell him like, dude, this guy really needs your help. It's not going to hurt you. That's what we're here for. You're part of the group. And you're like, all right, but I think it's a waste of time.
Right.
You know, it's fun to be the cantankerous guy.
Yeah.
But a lot of people will take it to the whole, well, I just can't. I see no reason that my Wolverine character would get involved. Well, good. Stay at the end. We'll go do an adventure. You can stay home and watch them play. You know?
Yeah. Balance is the key to the game.
That was a big discussion topic at the beginning of 3rd edition. And I was in love with balance, believe it or not, with 3rd edition. In love with it.
A lot of people talked about balance.
Yeah, they did.
And I really tried to see that point of view, but I was like, you're reaching. Balance with what? With
It's an
whom?
illusion. Mm-hmm.
I think it is because there's been some discussion on Tenkar's podcast about, and we've talked about it, I believe, experience point charts. We've talked about it offline for sure. Experience point charts were a way to balance characters in old editions because they had differing charts. So the wizard, who was more powerful overall, had a more difficult chart, had more points to get, and then extrapolate with the rest. So, but did it work out? Was it true? I mean, I don't know, because how many groups out there even used them?
Right. We didn't use experience points, raw experience points, very long.
No, and I don't know if we used all the little minute experience point things, because there was like
10% bonus for this, 5% for that.
And if you're a fighter, you get experience points for killing foes. If you're a wizard, you get experience points for nothing.
And your stat, and if you're a rogue, if you steal from somebody, if you're a thief, you get bonus. And if you had certain stats, I think wisdom would give you experience point bonuses. So clerics would have it too, but wizards didn't.
I don't think we did any of that.
I don't think so either. I think balance. I think it's important in perception, from the player's perception. The players have to feel like my character, in terms of balance, they have to feel like my character is just as important to our success as everybody else, in the sense that I'm doing something worthwhile. They don't have to be like, I'm not the big fighter guy. I don't win us in combats, but I am the silver-tongued rogue of power. I got us into the King's Court.
Right.
I got us into the Mayor's Hall. I got us into the magical Wizard's Tower by talking his ear off and impressing her. You know?
I remember back in the day thinking about how crazy it was that the fighters got all the experience points and they had one of the easier charts in the game.
I agree.
And the wizard, you got a spell off, and then you were done for a long time, and then you had to hide, and then you didn't get any experience points.
And fighters were like,
or if you went by the rules, you didn't get as many experience points.
For the first few levels, the fighters were the kings too.
Right.
They were the baddest class. I'm sorry, they were.
Right.
They were the toughest. But yeah, true. Good point.
So balance to me, after a while, really, I thought that any perceived balance you thought there was between the classes, there might be, but if it was, I'm of the opinion it's accidental.
And they
tried, but how can you tell?
It shouldn't be in the same arena. Really, wizards and fighters should probably have more effect on combat than other classes. 3rd edition tried to rectify it by allowing you to build whatever you got to turn all the dials to 11. So
I just don't see how you can show balance between the character classes.
Yeah.
Or between whatever else I think you're hard pressed. Chaos and randomization, baby.
Yeah, so that's the opposite of balance.
Yeah.
Caution to the wind. I'm going to do a random dungeon. You might see an aboleth in the next room in your second level.
I've done that.
Hey,
Not
that's
the
fun.
aboleth is second level, but I've
Right.
done a random dungeon thing.
Yep.
It can be fun.
Yeah, it can be.
But
Can be a fun
everything's
house.
not random.
Right? Why not? +5 sword. Sweet. Good job. Your second level.
I'm going to roll on a die. I'm going to be. You could totally randomize what even character you have.
Mm-hmm.
Completely random.
Yep, you could. I don't know. I think that can be overboard. Be overboard too. Definitely too much randomness. But I've met some people that just you never know from one session to the next how they're going to react to some of the same things.
Right.
What
are you going to do? I don't know. Let me roll a die.
Oh gosh, I'm chaotic neutral. I got to roll. Oh, looks like I'm killing you. Oh, looks like I'm buying you a house. Yeah, that could get crazy.
Oh yeah.
This next was a pet peeve of mine. A little bit of a pet peeve.
Am I missing something?
Oh, you don't have this one. Oh, you might be. So I must have added this. Make characters, name characters to fit the setting and the DM guidelines. And what I mean by that is, I really hate when you have, I've said it before, my guy's name is Gonzo, the fighter. My guy's name is Willy Wonka, the wizard. And I know it's fantasy and things can be whatever, but I get, in anachronistic names, or I'm going to play a half Dampier, half fairy, gladiator cyborg, gladiator android in your Pathfinder game. No, gunslinger. Sorry, gladiator gunslinger in your Pathfinder game. And like, dude, we're running Rise of the Rune Lords. It's about fighting goblins and giants in sort of a standard little town. And you're going to play this crazy little goofball of a character. Or his name is,
Butch.
But Butch doesn't bother as much as you would think. It's probably because Joe's playing it. He's got Butch and Brock. I do find it a little tired, but I mean, I think, in the Savage Worlds game, your guy's named Cord, but that's okay. That's kind of a cool sounding name.
But
okay.
It's short for
his
full name.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't mind that so much, and especially where Butch came from, and even where Brock's played, it's a little more, less stringent. But like in my Savage Worlds game, my Sanctuary game, I have a feel I'm trying to project. And I even sent you guys like, look, elves tend to have this naming convention. Dwarves tend to have this naming convention. Not that you have to follow it, but I don't want players to go like way off the reservation and just pick super anachronistic names or bards that play a frickin' electric guitar. I know some of our buddies think that's funny, and it can be if you're doing a funny game. But if I'm playing a halfway serious game, I don't really want that.
Right.
But some people on the other side of the coin, like D&D is not serious.
Right.
It's about goofing off and having fun. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. That's cool. So last question here, and I don't have this on your handout either. This is what I mentioned I was going to do today. I listened to Tinkar's Tavern today and his tavern chat, and he was talking about refereeing, being a referee or judge or moderator versus being a game master. Did you listen to that podcast by any chance?
No, I did not.
So he was saying, so a referee is someone who is a impartial arbiter of rules, which they called that a lot coming from war games. They're all about checking if there's a situation that comes up, do I get +4 for sneaking up behind this guy? One guy goes, I think it's +2. No, it's just extra damage. The judge goes, let me look the rule up. The referee does, and let's do this. It doesn't mean, in my mind, a judge or referee, and I agree with Tinker on this, he wouldn't make calls. Even though it's strange, they call old school GMs referees and judges a lot of times.
Yes.
But I think that's holdover from war games.
Yeah.
But I think if you're a referee, you should be an impartial arbiter of the rules. Now, game master could do that too, / storyteller, if you want to call him that. But I feel like the game master tries to make the game fun. And I'm using Tinkar's definitions. He's trying to make the game fun for everybody there. The session's a good time. The story flows. it's a reasonable thing to do. And sometimes he does make rules. Sometimes, like, I don't want to slow the game down and look up stupid grappling rules in 3.5.
Right.
I mean, so what do you think of those two types of, GMs, DMs, whatever you want to call them?
I certainly hope that someone that I'm gaming with isn't going to be impartial.
Okay. You don't want that. You don't want a referee.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Because referee implies that they're not really playing.
I think so too. Feels like they're not.
If you think about a ref for like a basketball game, they're letting the guys play to some degree, and
yes.
they just
watch.
They watch, and if there's an infraction of the rules, they say, "Hey, you can't do that."
Right. Yeah, it feels like to me.
There's some bits where the referee gets in and says, "Okay, we got to stop play for whatever reason or another. Resolve this issue, and then start playing again."
I'm with you, and I think a game master should have some qualities of a referee. He should be impartial at times when there's no reason for one choice or the other to be any more important to the game or not. But, if your character has been, I don't know, let's say your character's been trying hard, spending all these months and months of gameplay to join the Thieves Guild. He's done all the things they've asked and been successful. And then the rules say to join the Thieves Guild, you have to make a personality check. And you're like plus 50 to the roll, and you roll a stinking 1. The GMs, I think the GM is well within his rights and should say there is no roll. You've accomplished all these things.
Right.
And I think that would be annoying as a player.
So if you're going to be just an arbiter of the rules, you're not going to make any rulings.
No, you're just going to, you're the one. Sorry, they don't like you.
You're out.
You're out. And to me, I would be okay making a roll if I felt it was important. And if they rolled a 1, I would be like, yeah, they accept you. And be like, really? I'm like, yeah. And then one of the guys that likes you in the guild goes, look, dude, I just want you to know, that guild master's assistant, the junior guild master, he's got it in for you, dude. He is not impressed with you at all. You better watch your back. That's how I would do it. You're in, but maybe that stinky roll, for some reason, that guy never really liked you. And heck, maybe he was working against you on all those trials you were doing.
Sure.
And so to me, that's like, oh, cool, but my 1 did matter. And if the player asked me, I rolled a 1, how come I didn't fail? I'd be like, look, dude, did you think you should? No, I didn't want that to happen. This is the price you're paying. You've made an enemy. And to me, that's cool. And it makes more
it makes it
fun.
more interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I think the guy behind the screen needs to be a game master. He needs to know when to help move the story along and when to be partial, when to be impartial, and when not to be impartial.
Yeah.
Is it going to rain today? Roll the dice. If it's important, because we don't have rain gear, you still roll the dice.
Right.
Sorry about your luck, dude. It's a downpour and it's cold. Everybody make a fatigue check because you guys are cold and tired.
Right.
I think that's fine. Yeah, I agree. All right. I think we hit a whole bunch of the mindsets there.
We did.
All right.
So, at Cabin Con.
Yeah. And this is broader in scope now.
What is the mindset at Cabin Con?
I'm talking you and me. And
Yeah. So at Cabin Con, the mindset to me is having fun rolling dice the whole weekend.
Fun for me is the key. Everything's got to be fun. We're not, even me as the killer DM, I'm not there to kill. Everybody's fun. I'm not going to try to murder all the characters in one shot. But I also feel like Cabin Con, I tend to be a little more impartial because they're mostly one shots, right?
Yeah, it's one shots.
And so it's like,
and that's a different mindset in and of itself.
True.
Because if it's a one shot game, a lot of the stuff that we like to have and like to experience at our home game over and over, a lot of that becomes unimportant.
Yeah. The idea of
one shot.
Yeah, and we do, and you expect pre-gens. I do. I expect everybody to have pre-gens. Unless you have a very fast character creation system, I expect everybody to have pre-gens. So I'm ready to have fun, sit down, hand me a character. I don't care what it is, and I'll play it. I'm down.
random. Could even be random.
It could be random. That'd be completely fine. Dude, I might do that with my OD&D game now that I think about it. I think I'll just have 1 to 6, everybody roll dice. There you go. Okay, you get number 1, you get number 2, you get number 4. Yeah, that'd be cool. Do you think our friends have a similar attitude, just on your gut feeling?
Many of them.
I think so too.
Yeah, pretty much. I think over the years, I think I've seen different mindsets, even in myself, sometimes more tight than other times.
I have been that way for sure.
Yeah. But I think here, the last several, it's just been about us getting together and having fun.
Yeah, early on, I got so caught up on the organizational part because I do the majority of the organizing, and it's become easier now that it's become something that's kind of autopilot. Things work pretty much on autopilot. Our business meeting is really nothing more than an excuse to get together and eat food and talk crap. But I'm with you. It's much more of a vacation. I'm looking. This one is as probably even more than last year's. More of a let's have fun. Don't get worked up about stuff.
Yeah.
Chill out. Roll some dice. Let's see what happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Especially since we're going to be able to do this face to face.
Oh yes, baby.
No masks, no social distancing.
No BS.
Face to face gaming the whole weekend.
Cool. All right.
So, next we have our finally getting to talk about 3rd edition.
Yeah, Jason C, here you go, buddy. We're going to beat this game. 3rd edition Dungeons and Dragons. I don't mean 3.5. I mean 3.0.
It's difficult to know to be able to tease them apart after playing.
It is.
Especially, and then there's 3rd edition, then there's 3.5, and then Pathfinder. I think I played Pathfinder for a longer period than either 3.0 or 3.5. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Okay. But can you remember back to the halcyon days when 3rd came out and you got that Chris Player's Handbook and you opened it up and you played a few games? What was good about it?
It was good. The best thing about it is that we had a game.
Check. 2nd edition had been a long time and long in the tooth. We didn't know if TSR was going to make it. WOTC swooped in and saved TSR. So big bonuses for 3rd edition for that.
Right. And I didn't worry that WOTC. I didn't worry about WOTC having a different. I didn't even think about it being a different game.
No, me neither.
I think at the point when we had 3rd edition, WOTC or people that was at TSR, I think they did take on some of their employees.
Near the end, I don't know. I'll tell you this story with 3rd edition. When I was at Gen Con, the year they announced 3rd edition. And I was in this room, 400 or 500 people. They gave out these black T-shirts with the 3E symbol on it, and the one they used, the little monogram one. And we sat down, and they said, "Okay, we would like everybody who has been play testing the 3rd edition to stand up." And I'm looking all around, and this dude 2 seats down from me, who I didn't go to the con with, but I knew him. He's a friend of a friend. My cousin's brother-in-law's buddy stood up. And I'd met him a couple of times before. I'd seen him a couple of times that year. He hadn't told anybody. Even his best friend, my cousin's brother-in-law, had no idea. He had been play testing 3rd edition for a year. He was in a group. And he looked over at me and he goes, "You guys are going to love it." That's what he said. And I'm like, whoa. And that place was electric, dude. Because of we didn't know what was going to happen with D&D because of TSR and what WOTC was going to do, and and then they had on the screen, are you tired of 20 strength for a fighter? Yes. Half orcs out the gate? Yes. Can you play an assassin? Yes. What was it? How did it describe? Something else they said. These different statements you would.
There was a big list.
Level limits? No. And I was like, whoa, this big list of all these things.
Right.
And it got me pumped up. I was a little nervous though, because that's when it was the first time I was thinking, this may be not the D&D I remember. And it was different.
It was.
The miniatures were something else. But what did you really like when you cracked it open and got playing? Say you played for a few months and really starting to get into it. What was a big pro for you?
Well, at first, Well, getting bonus spells as a playing wizard, that was neat. Although
Right
I still had a gripe
Of course you did.
because it didn't make sense to me that wizards would get extra spells of 1st through 9th, but not extra cantrips. And then clerics got extra cantrips.
Did they? Did they have cantrips in
Sorcerers or
third?
something. Maybe it was somebody.
Probably sorcerers. I think sorcerers did.
And I'm like, why don't you? If you're going to get more of the others and they can't, it just didn't make sense. It wasn't.
You can't please this guy.
No, you got to make sense.
What else did you like? Other pros about 3.0.
Let me think. I think the seeming open-endedness of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. At the moment, I can't remember anything in particular except I think I liked the newness.
Yeah. I thought they encouraged that, not only just openness, I thought the game itself was like, dude, you're going to play to 20th level.
Right.
You're going to play to 20th level. It's going to happen. You're not going to go build strongholds at 9th level.
Right.
And to me, that was a new cool thing. Wizards had the ability, and this put me off at first. Wizard could cast spells in combat. If you could 5-foot step away, you could get your spell off right in somebody's face. That was hard for me to swallow till I realized how the rules worked. I thought AOOs were intriguing. I thought at this time, I thought that the idea of using the miniatures for real, actual rules that had character abilities that affected the mini, I thought was really great. Hey, I'm getting my minis and we're actually using them. They're part of the game. I really liked, for me, I liked how everybody had the base attack bonus, +1, +2, +3. Ascending armor class was massively improvement. Fortitude, reflex, and will. Yes, that is my favorite saving throws of all time.
I liked that.
Yeah, I think it really is. Though I like the simplicity of a single save, I do think Fortitude, reflex, will is probably better.
I was hoping to get away from Vancian.
They gave you the sorcerer, dude.
Yeah, and it sucked.
First 3.0 sorcerer was weak sauce.
Oh, it was very bad. But they didn't, because there was the whole sacred cow discussion.
Yeah.
These are the things we're not going to touch because they are the sacred cows. People will think that D&D isn't D&D anymore. However, in retrospect, at this point, I think that they didn't have enough things on the list for a lot of people.
Oh, okay.
Of sacred cows.
Right. Sneak attack, I thought, was really cool for the game. I thought it made the rogue worthwhile in combat. Because I remember in the 2nd edition, I was like, why would you even play a thief? If your game's going to go past 5th or 6th level or 8th level, the cleric can take over for the thief. The wizard can take over for the thief. You don't need the thief. He's just a low hit point, weak fighter. And then I thought when he came around, it was really good. I thought multi-classing was slick because you could literally be 3 levels of rogue. Now I'm going to add a level of ranger. Base attack means just, does the ranger give you a +1? Then you add it on. Is his saving throws a bonus? Then you add it on. Hit points, roll his hit dice. I thought it was really simple in terms of how you can multi-class, because multi-classing was super duper weird in 2nd and 1st editions, just the way they did it.
Well, yeah. But I did have a little bit of so your character all of a sudden can become a wizard or can all of a sudden become a fighter.
Yeah, that made me pause.
It's a little weird.
Rules wise, I liked it. I thought things worked together really tightly. Yeah. I like the roll high was good always. Roll low was bad always. Grappling was, again, not indecipherable, but very confusing. Had trouble at first with some, the 5-foot step. Eventually, I think I really liked how the wizard could get in there and do things, and he didn't need help. Didn't always have to have the meat shield protecting him all the time. I thought the art was pretty good. It didn't strike me as better than 2nd, but it did feel fresh and new. I love the monster manual. Thought it was pretty.
And I think that at that point, I liked how they were like, well, building a monster is just like building a character.
Yep. I thought that was cool then.
Yeah, but now I'm like, that was a bad way to go.
Right, we've backed off. And another thing I liked, which we don't like now, I think I've said it. I love the idea of prestige classes.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were real. The idea was really cool. This special narrow focus class that makes you really good at one tiny little thing. But that wasn't the way it worked. They were either totally suck or they were way too powerful.
Yeah.
You know, and it was always about the prestige class. If you were a caster, does it let me keep casting do I get full caster levels? If I don't, it's not worth my time.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we started seeing the cons, you know.
Mm-hmm.
There was the whole, remember, you had to burn experience points to make magic items. That was not a just spend money thing. So no one hardly ever did it. It was really rare to make magic items. And the wizard would lose it if he made my fighter a sword. My fighter wouldn't lose anything.
Yeah. And then once the shiny, it stopped being shiny.
Yes.
You could say, why would anybody ever pick a feat that gives them 3 hit points? It's the dumbest thing ever.
Feats seemed really cool. Customization.
Yeah. But there was a very broad disparity of power difference between the feats. But they stepped into it when they were questioned about that. They were like, yeah, you need to know you need to be good at picking them.
Yeah, they wanted
that's not a very good argument.
Well, yeah, I know. It's like, but you know, you'd be hard pressed to balance every feat out, as many as there were.
Correct.
And if we add 3.5 to this mix, which probably doesn't deserve a separate discussion, 3.5 brought the super bloat in, changed some rules. I thought haste was busted in 3.0. It was just way too good. Well, that's not the right. Let me rephrase that. Haste was, in my opinion, every bit as good as 5th level spell. Every bit, because you got a free.
I can't remember the distinction.
Here's how it worked: wizard cast haste, and he could then cast a spell as a quick action.
That's right.
And then another spell on his turn. So it was the 2 spell. Now you would burn. The argument was, well, he burns through his spell list. Dude, he's only going to do it when he has to. Right. Now you had to get to 7th level to cast mass haste, but haste was if you were a 5th level wizard and you didn't pick haste, you weren't trying to do the best for your wizard.
Right.
You had another plan. I don't care what it was. That was the best 3rd level spell, period. And in my opinion, in power level, especially, and it never stopped being useful. Never. And once you got quicken spell, quicken a haste. That was crazy. You know,
that's what you would do.
Yeah. So you'd quicken a haste, and haste lets you cast another spell, and then you get to cast 3 spells. So counting the quick and haste. So it was pretty crazy. And 3.5, they made haste good, but for everybody but the wizard, which was also not a good fix, but it made it a 3rd level spell. Broken's not the right word, but it was the optimal choice for the spell. Yeah,
I remember that now. There was a bit of when it went to 3.5, it was really, I thought I had a hard time with it because I thought they went to 3 because initially they went to revise for a few issues.
Mm-hmm.
But after they decided they were going to revise, they decided, well, we're not going to waste our time with just a few issues. We would only have to make a pamphlet for that.
They wanted to score on the player's handbook sales.
Oh yeah. So
I think Monty Cook said that was actually in the works from the beginning of 3.0.
A revision? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember him saying something about that.
Yeah. And I think he fought against it, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I think
I was from the very beginning when they're first talking about making a revised edition or whatever. I was like, just make a booklet that says these are the new things because they're better or whatever, and then move on from there. But no, they had to do 3 books. They had the new covers, and they were like, oh, it's so good. Whatever.
And unlike Pathfinder, summoning sucked because you had a Pathfinder summoning can be really good.
Yeah.
In 3rd edition and 3.0, it was really not worth your time.
Not worth it.
It was fine for a GM for his wizard to do it because he had other things he could get help with. Yeah. But for a wizard, it's a waste of a spell. Mm-hmm. And a high end, Time Stop was beyond busted. Mm-hmm. Time Stop was the game winner. I remember seeing online and also on articles, people are saying he who casts Time Stop first wins.
Yes.
Because you could cast all. I remember I had a wizard, had this in the last 3rd edition game campaign I played. It was high level. This bad guy wizard cast Time Stop, and then he proceeded to cast Well of the Banshee Meteor Swarm, Horde Wilting, and then a couple of other fireballs, and I just obliterated a 20 level party. And I targeted the monk. With Meteor Swarm, so he didn't get a save.
Right.
Because he would make it,
Yeah.
And I did that because I was like, it wasn't like I was being devious. Those are not particularly devious. That's not a particularly devious. It was like, you can do it. You got 5 rounds, do whatever you want. Okay. Attack spell, no save, crappy save. Even if you save, you're screwed.
Right.
So yeah, it was like obliteration. And so, yeah, the game broke down, but every game, all the versions of D&D tend to break down at high level unless you're careful. You got to really plan it out carefully. But that was some of the drawbacks. But 3rd edition was still, it was a watershed moment in D&D history for me. It was a big deal.
Oh, it was a big deal. It brought us the OGL. The OGL made a lot of changes. It brought the OGL.
Brought the OSR.
The OSR. The OSR is now a kind of a bastion of sanity in the industry.
It is.
So as much as you could probably poke 3rd edition at this point, well after the fact, you have to give it some props.
How about now? So let's rate this thing. How would you rate it for the size, extra small to 2X?
I'd say L.
Yeah, I think I lean toward L2. I think my nostalgia for it right now is pretty high, but I would say L. Definitely happy to play it, and I would I'd run a full-blown 3rd edition. I'd play a 3.0 game, even with haste the way it is. I would do it.
Sounds good to me.
Cool. All right, man.
All right. Well,
nice.
We have anything else to say?
I do not think so, brother, unless you do.
All righty. So if you'd like to support our show, please check us out at our website at www.biggestgeegaspodcast.com/support. Any contribution is much appreciated, and we thank you for your consideration. Please share the podcast with your friends. It's available most places you can get podcasts. If there's an app out there that you would like us to get on that we're not, let us know, and you can do that through our email, questions@biggestgeegaspodcast.com. And you can send any other question you like as well.
Yeah, well, I would ask for this too, if you don't mind, Joe. I wish someone would comment on our rants that we've done in the past, or some of our, especially with gaming news. Sometimes we get off on our tangents about things we don't like. We're going to put them at the end of the podcast. We might even do one on this one. Are we going to do one on this one, Joe?
I'm getting really tired.
We're not going to do one on this one, but maybe the next podcast. This has been a long one. We're well into 2 hours. So, all right, bud. But I'd like to know people's opinion, whether we should put it in the main show or at the end.
Right. Also, we'd like to encourage you to check out some podcasts that we like. We've added one at the end. Red Dice Diaries with John Allen Large and his wife, Hannah. Radio Grognard with Glenn Hallstrom. Tell the Manicore, different kind of podcast, but still good.
Yep.
Tavern Chat with Eric Tenkar. Nerds RPG Variety Cast with Jason. And Shadow of the GM with Barry.
Excellent one.
Also, you could let us know if there's some podcasts you'd like us to listen to and comment on. That'd be great.
That would be great.
And I think that's it.
I don't know. Did we talk about it too? They know they can call us, leave messages, voice messages on Anchor.
Voice message on Anchor. You can.
Yeah,
do
they
that.
can. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to do it too. If you don't want to email us.
All right, then. Man. This is Joe.
And I'm Randy.
And remember, if you can't be big like us, then be geeks like us.